Chapter 49. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Show.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The most tragic epileptic patient in history? It was as if Luo Nan could already see his miserable end in this instant. Love Go Small Say Netka. This also reflected a deeper understanding of his. The structure of the long line, at this moment, was like a huge neuron. As the basic signal processing unit of the human body, the ideal model of the neuron was almost the shape of a tree. The branching branches are the dendrites that receive information. The main part is the axon that transmits information. The axon endings of the anterior neuron were similar to the roots of a large tree. They then contacted the dendrites of the posterior neuron to realize the conduction of neurotransmitters and electrical signals. Just like at this moment, the tree, growing between the various system modules in the laboratory, was collecting a massive amount of electrical signals from the various system modules and transmitting them. The problem was that this large neuron had a different structure compared to a normal neuron. It did not realize autonomous operation. Instead, it used its roots as an external source of energy. The end point of the transmission of information became the heavily chained crow that fused with the main trunk. In fact, it was Luo Nan. In a certain sense, the large neuron that was the incarnation of the long thread was like an external artificial organ for Luo Nan. This was a very magical thing. If it was used well, it would have endless potential. However, the information transmission mode of large-sized neurons was much more violent than that of normal neurotransmitters. Hundreds of millions of electrical signals swarmed in. No matter who it was impossible for them to process such a huge amount of information that passed through the same route at the same time. Luo Nan tried to sever the connection with the heavily chained crow, but how could this sort of subtle connection on the mental plane be so easily severed? It was as if he could already see himself drowning in the electrical signals and suffering from convulsions in an instant. However, what Luo Nan waited for wasn't a flood of electrical signals a second later. Instead, it was a bright and familiar interface. The central control room lit up, but it wasn't the brightly lit kind. The energy and information controlled by the large-sized neurons were presented in a rather restrained manner. An exquisite and peerless transformation was completed between the enormous amount of photoelectric signals. The results were transmitted to the enormous screen in front of Luo Nan. What was displayed on the giant screen was none other than the flexible e-ink interface that had accompanied Luo Nanda for 5 years. Without a doubt, this was another masterpiece of the long line. On the small screen of the bracelet, and on the giant monitor screen that spanned half the room, it used this method to announce its existence. Luo Nan was a bit stupefied when facing the enormous flexible e-ink screen interface. At this moment, what he saw was not only the flashing interface, but also the operating principles behind it. The structure of the large-sized neuron was full of the flavor of bionics. As a nerve cell, it naturally had the basic structure of a cell body. Through the heavily chained crow, Luo Nan discovered this region at the junction between the main trunk and the branches of the large tree. This was the first place where the tremendous amount of electrical signals were transmitted back from the lush branches. Functions that Luo Nan was unable to explore were integrated here. But at the very least, it had the functions of analysis, filtering, transcoding, and compiling. It was like a set of processor chips, or perhaps it was an auxiliary subbrain. First, it transformed the enormous amount of signals into something concise, clear, and easy to understand. Only then did it truly return to the central control system and Luo Nan's brain. This prevented massive amounts of information from damaging the brain, truly realizing the incredible function of an external neuron. This was not some fantastical thing, but a real operating mechanism. Love Go Small Say Netka. The information technology involved in the conversion of mental and material signals, the interaction technology between man and machine, was undoubtedly something that people could only look up to. Was this a level that Earth's technology could reach? Luo Nan pondered for a while, but he still didn't gain anything. He could only return his attention to the interface that he could understand. At first glance, the flexible e-ink screen's interface was still the same style, but there were still some changes. The interface that Luo Nan used was always very refreshing. There weren't many applications that he chose. For example, He usually only used the flexible e-ink screen to surf the web, draw, read e-books, and so on. He didn't download any extra applications. There were exactly 8 application icons on the main interface. Among them were the 5 basic functions of the system: time, calendar, video player, browser, and settings. Luo Nan downloaded the file editor, and his cousins group forced him to download the popular communication software on the market. Finally, there was the drawing software that had always existed. These application icons were arranged vertically, taking up 2 rows. There were 4 icons in each row. The layout was clear at a glance. But at this time, Luo Nan clearly saw a new icon on the enormous screen. It was a crisscrossed gear structure. If it weren't for the difference in color, it would have been mistaken for a classic setting icon. And the icon's logo was very direct. It was the word gear. The external neuron also had the ability to automatically download applications? Luo Nan's thoughts stirred slightly. The telepathic sensing he had experimented with before was actually still working. A new interface opened up, and a set of building plans and elevations appeared in front of Luo Nan. Luo Nan confirmed with a glance that this was, without a doubt, the building blueprints of gear. This was because the characteristics of this set of blueprints were far too distinct. No wonder it was called gear. The entire building had at least 100 circular spaces that could be seen. They were scattered in various locations of the 7-story building. And looking at the structure, there were indeed a few doors and entrances that were designed in the rack style. Just looking at the floor plan, the entire building was like a heavy machine. Every part of the building was connected together in a gear-driven manner, forming an inseparable whole. It was marvelous and exquisite. There was also a row of options on the left side of the interface. Right now, practically all of them were grayed out. None of them could be selected. Only the option at the very bottom was still filled with a full luster. The name of the option was quite strange: observation platform. Luo Nan was unable to understand. A sound came from behind him right when he was baffled. Luo Nan's mind stirred, and the interface of the giant screen faded away. The central control room was restored to a darkness where one could not even see their fingers. It was unknown what kind of dream Xie Junping was having at this time. His hands and feet danced in joy, but he was completely unaware that he was sitting on a chair. He instantly lost his balance, toppled over, and fell down solidly. F***ck me, this time, Xie Junping actually woke up completely from the fall. He cursed and extended his hand to cover his head. He opened his eyes, but all he could see was darkness. He clearly hadn't come back to his senses. He shouted over there, "Turn on the lights." Luo Nan used his wristband, which was close to shutting down, to emit a bit of light, fulfilling Xie Junping's wish to a certain extent. In this sort of place, under this sort of lighting, the sudden glimmer of light and the silhouette of a face could really scare a person to death. Xie Junping drew in a breath of cold air and let out another cry. He had instinctively dodged, but he had bumped into the chair. Luo Nan didn't want to play around with pleasantries. He directly said, "Senior, it's good that you're awake. You were probably in a bad state just now, so you fainted. The laboratory detected that you lost consciousness, so they cut off your temporary privileges. The energy and life support systems have all stopped working. Take a look and see if your privileges have been restored." Ah. Xie Junping used 5 seconds of time to digest the information Luo Nan transmitted. He immediately quivered and finally woke up. He didn't have the time to ask how he fainted in the end. He immediately lit up his wristband and dealt with the issue of privileges. About 3 seconds later, Xie Junping kicked away the chair next to him with a loud bang. Then, he started cursing loudly, "Damn it. You said I need to reapply. Give me a fucking signal." Chapter 50. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Show.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Forget it, I shouldn't have had high hopes for this system anyway. Love goes small. Say net. Luo Nan felt that his actions of hiding the interface just now were quite foolish. Fortunately, it was not too late to mend the pen after the sheep were lost. He sighed and knocked on the control panel, causing the giant screen in front of him to light up again. The light of the enormous screen elongated Luo Nan's shadow, causing Xia Juanping's jaw to drop to the ground. Brother Nan, you are a hacker? Luo Nan didn't know how to explain, so he simply didn't speak. Xia Juanping, on the other hand, grew excited all of a sudden. My goodness! I heard that this system was strengthened by Quantum Corporation. Junior Nan, you can even order it around? Wasn't this guy's mood a little strange? Luo Nan still remembered that Xia Juanping had nearly fainted from fear. Before he fainted, Xia Juanping had wailed at Luo Nan for mercy. But in this current situation, not only did Xia Juanping's fear of Luo Nan completely disappear, even his fear of being trapped in a hopeless situation was reduced to a minimum. Could it be that he had lost his memory due to the shock? Or could it be that the effect of killing the burning wraith was really immediate? Luo Nan didn't come to a conclusion after a short period of pondering, so he put this matter to one side. He reopened the gear interface and focused on the observation platform option. Several seconds later, he pressed it with his mind. There were no changes on the interface, but there was a stream of information flowing through the heavily chained crow into his brain, allowing him to understand many things. Luo Nan muttered to himself for a bit before turning around. Let's go. Leave? Where are we going? Xia Juanping looked around at the dark surroundings and didn't dare to move. But in the next second, a door automatically opened at the side of the central control room, leading to an even darker space. Love go small say netku. Xia Juanping blurted out, secret passage? Turn on the light from the bracelet. Ah. Luo Nan's mind stirred, and the giant screen went out. The room was restored to a pitch-black darkness. Xia Juanping exclaimed and hurriedly turned on the light on his bracelet, barely illuminating the road ahead. Since there was light, Luo Nan didn't say much. He directly headed in the direction of the newly opened door. Hey, this is a secret passage, right? Xia Juanping lowered his voice and suppressed his nervousness as he followed closely behind. It's a corridor outside. Though the giant screen was extinguished, Luo Nan's large-scale external neuron was still controlling that portion of the resource. It transmitted effective information through the heavily chained crow and transferred it to his cranial nerves. The scene was directly mapped onto his retina. As long as Luo Nan's energy was enough to support the existence of the heavily chained crow, this electronic map would not lose its effectiveness no matter how far the distance was. Of course, without the heavily chained crow to guide the wraith sign, and without the risk of his soul leaving his body, he had become blind in this darkness. He needed a source of light. Xia Juanping had already understood the ruthlessness of the defense system from the bracelet. He was completely confused at this time. If it's not a secret passage, how did it open? It should be the original design of the builder. All the portals along the route we took were controlled by an independent power source. The people who modified it later obviously didn't notice this. Why is it so troublesome? Xia Juanping shook the beam of light from his bracelet and looked around. Sure enough, he saw that there were public places like corridors along the way. Occasionally, he had to pass through one or two rooms, but there was no need to hide. It's probably a hobby. Luo Nan's brain incessantly flashed with the elevation and floor plan of gear. The tight structure and the peculiar design made him gasp in admiration at every moment. The layout of the entire building seemed to transform into a machine that could be activated at any time to process some product. Right now, he and Xia Juanping were shuttling back and forth between the components of gear, carrying out a marvelous tour. With the external neuron controlling them, Luo Nan and Xia Juanping were completely green all the way. They didn't encounter any obstacles. After passing through the stairs of the safety passageway, the two should have gone from the 4th underground floor to the 2nd underground floor. Though this place was still within the scope of the laboratory, it was clearly a public activity area. They swept past the beam of light, and they even saw a bar counter, a sofa, and so on used for resting. What a weirdo. Xia Juanping finally put an end to his conjecture regarding the secret passage. He once again greeted the strange hobby of the builder. In any case, Xia Juanping's state of mind grew more and more relaxed as they walked through the darkness because of this weirdo. He also dared to carry out his duty as a lamplighter. He took the initiative to go to the front and illuminate the place. If there really was some sort of secret passage placed in front of him, it would be debatable whether or not he would have the guts to make his way through. Hey, where do we go up ahead? Xia Juanping's beam of light swept across a wall. It followed the wall, and the outline of the resting area retracted in an arc. It seemed to be the end. Before Luo Nan could respond, the beam of light suddenly swept across a signboard. It immediately locked onto the signboard. Xia Juanping stood still in a single step and fiercely slapped his thigh. I know where this is. Luo Nan followed the beam of light and looked over. He saw that the signboard displayed an underwater scene in a hand-drawn style. Fishes swam amidst the aquatic plants. The scene was all the more vivid under the flickering light. Where is this? The Sandbar Waterway. It's a very famous scenic spot in Gear. From here. Xia Juanping used the beam of light to sweep across a sealed door. Just enter from here all the way to the Withered Tree Sandbar 700 meters away. A long underwater corridor was built there. The middle of the corridor passes through half a swamp and a small lake. It's a good place to get close to the underwater ecology of the wetlands. After a simple introduction, Xia Juanping began to gossip again. I heard that this underwater corridor existed before the construction of Gear. However, someone used the crime of destroying the ecology to sue them. The construction party nearly lost their pants, allowing the Order Society to pick up a great bargain. When they constructed Gear, they deliberately connected it together. Of course, they have to pay quite a bit of taxes every year. Luo Nan found the most crucial information from Xia Juanping's string of nonsense. You're saying that there's a sandbar over there? Yeah. It's a very famous place. It's said that it's the best place to view the entirety of Gear's construction. Luo Nan nodded to himself. Is this why it's called the observation platform? Xia Juanping finally reacted at this time. He slapped Luo Nan on the shoulder in excitement. Junior Nan, aren't we free now? We just need to get to the sandbar. F*CK the signal. F*CK. Xia Juanping suddenly cursed again. Luo Nan was baffled. What's wrong now? It seems bad. Luo Nan couldn't see Xia Juanping's expression clearly, but his voice was a bit panicked. I remember that the water level of the wetlands rose a few years ago. The sandbar was completely submerged. Right now, there's a crooked, withered tree sticking out of the water. Hiss. The Order Society wouldn't have sealed the exit over there, right? Luo Nan confirmed the route and confirmed that it was just as Xia Juanping said. They needed to pass through the underwater corridor. He hadn't discovered any abnormalities so far. We'll know once we go over there and take a look. Luo Nan directly opened the entrance to the underwater corridor. A slightly fishy smell of water assaulted his face. It was probably the result of many years of soaking. Xia Juanping sent out a beam of light in a perfectly straight line, but it was impossible to illuminate the end. This long corridor was the same as the building as a whole. It was clearly curved. Chapter 51. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. The two walked shoulder to shoulder into the long corridor. It was still extremely dark and quiet, but the effect was completely different from the deathly stillness of the laboratory. Even though it was dark, they could see rippling water waves within the murkiness as they walked along the long corridor. A tiny amount of sunlight was refracted within the water. It was extraordinarily vivid. There were also faint sounds transmitted from the glass walls on all four sides. The underwater life forms were affected by the light. They came one after another, scraping against the glass walls. The quieter it was, the louder it was. There was one time when Xia Juanping couldn't hold back his curiosity. He shot a beam of light into the water and illuminated an alligator. Xia Juanping saw the malevolent head crash against the glass wall with a rumble. He instinctively dodged, but he collided fiercely against the other side of the wall. The collision caused tears to flow out. He became much more well-behaved from then on. No matter what, he had to walk along the center of the long underwater corridor. He even took the initiative to lower the brightness of the lighting. In the end, he arrived at the end of the long corridor without any danger. There was clearly a bend here. Xia Junping walked to the corner, trembling with fear and trepidation. He used his wristband to illuminate it, and what entered his eyes was a thick and heavy alloy door. He looked at the series of steel bolts that came down from above, and his entire body felt unwell. Xia Junping threw himself over and fiddled with it for a long time. In the end, he fiercely kicked the door 3 times, but only muffled thuds rang out. It was clear that the place had already been filled with water, soil, and sand. He thought of the most important matter and lowered his head to look at the signal. It seems like there's a bit. There's only a meter or 2 between here and the ground. The problem was that the water and soil layers were mixed together. It possessed an extremely powerful electromagnetic shielding effect. Xia Junping's wristband could be considered quite powerful, but it was still very hard for him to receive a clear signal. Xia Junping tossed and turned until his forehead was beaded with sweat. Luonan shifted his gaze to other locations in the long underwater corridor. He followed the electronic map on his retina and felt his way along the seemingly seamless inner wall. His actions were far too obvious. Xia Junping, who had suffered setbacks time and time again, was attracted over. He copied Luonan and lightly knocked on the inner wall, but he couldn't hear anything at all. There weren't any hidden doors along the way. There's no need to break here. Those architectural designs are quite arrogant. Xia Junping's words were very insightful. In fact, the path on the electronic map that Luonan obtained ended at the sealed alloy door. There were no other directions. Luonan also tried to remotely control this door, but this was clearly a clumsy and purely physical isolation. It was completely immune to all advanced electronic remote control technology. But he did not give up. Because there was one thing that couldn't be explained no matter what. Why didn't the other system modules in the laboratory have any reaction on the external neurons interface? Only the functions of gear and the observation deck were clearly displayed. According to various information, the route of the observation deck was set up before Yan Hong established his laboratory. Was it a natural fit, or was it a deliberate modification later? If the subsequent modifications were so ingeniously different from Yan Hong's laboratory design, was there some kind of targeting? Along the way, they had been in the most ordinary public places. It seemed that only at the end of this corridor would there be some hidden spaces. If there really was a problem, it would be here. Luonan pondered for a moment before decisively ending his infiltration of the laboratory's system modules. He withdrew the heavily chained crow. It was worth mentioning that the external neuron had a higher priority with his mental connection. Once the heavily chained crow retracted, the external neuron transformed back into a long line of electricity and returned to his brain. Love go small say neku, what an inconceivable object. Luonan shook his head. He didn't want to waste too much time on this for the time being. Instead, he operated the heavily chained crow and drove the wraith sign to sweep and slice this area vertically and horizontally. All of these physical barriers were completely meaningless to the heavily chained crow and the wraith sign. Got it. Luonan suddenly raised his head to look at the alloy steel plate above him. 95% of the material that formed this underwater corridor was tempered glass. Only the 2 ends were fixed with metal. Normally, no one would pay attention to this. But when the heavily chained crow swept past, the material at a certain location above was clearly completely different from the alloy's steel plate and tempered glass. Hey, where are you looking at? Xia Junping noticed Luonan's abnormality. He raised his head to look, but he didn't discover anything. Luonan ignored him. He just earnestly estimated the height and angle. He should still be able to reach it, excuse me. Luonan swung Xia Junping aside and retreated 2 steps back. He ran with a boost and stomped heavily on the metal door. He borrowed the force to soar up a bit, and at the same time, he half-twisted his body and extended his hands upwards. The place where the alloy steel plate should have been had inexplicably transformed into something like mucus. It was just a bit of obstruction before it was broken through. And then Luo Nan's hands made contact with the edge of the actual steel plate. The collision was a bit painful, but his reaction was quite fast. He grabbed it and twisted his body a bit. He exerted strength from his waist and did a pull-up, and his body shot upwards. From Xia Juanping's perspective, half of Luo Nan's body was submerged within the steel plate. Then Luo Nan's two legs swayed, and he disappeared without a trace. F***ck me. Mimicry film. Xia Juanping's family had some business with the military. He was able to call out the name of this cutting-edge product in a single breath. This was truly a glimmer of hope at the darkest hour. It was worth celebrating. But here came the problem. It seems that I can't do this sort of high-difficulty leap and climb. Even with Luo Nan's help, Xia Juanping still wasted at least 10 minutes in order to barely pass this checkpoint that tested his control. And when he truly made contact with the space above, he couldn't help but curse, "My God." So the secret passage was waiting here. Indeed, this was a narrow passageway that didn't even reach a meter in height and width. One needed to bend their knees and crawl in order to pass through. It was completely different from the entire route they had taken before. What happened to the designer's pride? This place should have been opened later. It's different in front. Luo Nan had already done some scouting while Xia Juanping was wasting time. He led people to crawl over right now, and soon they displayed a completely different style. When the horizontal narrow passageway ended, the structure suddenly flipped upside down. It became a vertical space. Though it wasn't very spacious, it was more than enough to accommodate two people at the same time. Most importantly, it was much more comfortable. Under the illumination of the light, a wooden stone staircase spiraled upwards. Though there was light shining down, they still couldn't see the end. They touched it. It was very moist, but it was very clean. The two climbed up the staircase. Xia Juanping touched the inner wall with curiosity. It looks like tree bark. Hey, look at this position. Don't tell me we're inside a withered tree in the sandbar. Maybe. Luo Nan responded, the tree body should be filled with some sort of bionic material. It looks like it's close to decay, but it's actually extremely tough. Wow. This is a treehouse. The symbolic plant of the withered tree sandbar is a treehouse. Just what year and what month is this extravagant work? Holy crap. What the hell is this? Suddenly a black shadow rushed past Xia Juanping's eyes, leaping straight into the base of the tree. The shadow itself wasn't that big, but its speed was quite fast. It was unknown which path it took, but there was a faint sound of water. Then there was no more sound. Chapter 52. Genius in 1 second. Remember Love Go. SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Xia Juanping was frightened by the shadow and nearly fell down. He cut an extremely sorry figure, but he couldn't help but curse. Love Go small. SpeakNet. Luo Nan could see quite clearly due to the senses of the heavily chained crow. It's an animal from the swamp. It seems to be a muskrat. Are there any other entrances and exits besides the path we took to enter? Muskrats were a relatively common animal in the wetlands of Acumen College. Adult muskrats were 30 to 40 centimeters long, and their tails were 20 to 30 centimeters long. The one that just flashed past was much smaller. It seemed to be underage, but its movements were quite nimble. Xia Juanping grimaced in pain. This place hasn't been idle for a year or two. I'm afraid it's long since become a bird's nest or something. Be careful not to step on bird shit. He spat out the last word halfway before he forcefully swallowed it back down. The illumination beam just so happened to cut into a spacious area. One could see that the ring-shaped chair made the most use of the space. There were 2 stools placed casually. There were wall lamps embedded in the walls of the tree hole. There were also a few exquisite wall-hanging bookshelves and decorations. One could tell with a glance that this was a resting room. How big could a tree hole be? The usable area before their eyes definitely didn't exceed 3 square meters. It really couldn't even fit a bed. But the exquisite layout made the most use of the characteristics of the ring-shaped space in the tree hole. It gave off a rather relaxed and leisurely feeling. Xia Junping immediately forgot his previous words and clicked his tongue. You know how to enjoy yourself. Amazing. There's another floor above. Luo Nan pointed at the stone steps that continued to extend upwards and continued to walk. Why do I feel like this project isn't the least bit inferior to Gear? Especially after so many years. They're actually able to keep this a secret. Their mouths are too tight. Xia Junping followed Luo Nan as he climbed up. He had the tendency of turning from a hater to a fan. The two arrived at the upper floor as they spoke, which was also the top floor of the small tree hole. The layout here was a bit simpler. It even looked a bit spacious at first glance. There was only a table embedded in the wall of the tree hole. In front of it was a low stool modified from an irregular protrusion of a withered tree. The table was very clean. There was only a round tray placed on it. Xia Junping recognized it as the base of an old projector photo album. The projector probably ran out of power and went out. But as long as it was charged, it should be a very direct clue. Luo Nan was paying attention to the various areas within the tree hole. He fumbled around and pulled out a lot of brackets, braces, and other strange things, most of which were set up around the table. From their positions, it was obvious that this was a workshop. As long as the corresponding equipment was installed, it could handle ordinary research work. It was enough for a designer. Xia Junping watched from the side with interest. He also squeezed over to see if he could pull out any more airs. Luo Nan didn't squeeze with him. He moved to the opposite side of the table, to the most spacious area. There weren't any wall installations here, but if one looked carefully, there was a circle of irregular and narrow veined patterns. It roughly circled an area of about a square meter. He reached out and touched it, exerting a bit of force from the left and right. The inner wall of the bark in this area was like an unfolded scroll, flipping open to both sides. The next moment, sunlight shone in. The change in the light made Xia Junping, who was on the other side, suddenly turn his head. In reality, he had been tossing and turning in the laboratory and the tree hollow cabin for more than half an hour. It was already around 6:30. Night had already descended in Xia City, and the sky outside was rather dusky. Within the gloomy wetland jungle, several hundred meters away, only a vague silhouette could be seen. It was impossible to see clearly with the naked eye. But Luo Nan didn't know why, but he had a very good feeling at this moment. Perhaps it was because he was on the observation platform? The information given by the designer of gear was already thoroughly clear. Xia Junping suddenly laughed out loud to the side. Signal. There's a signal. Luo Nan didn't pay attention to him. He continued to survey the distant gear through the observation window. The blurry scenery with the naked eye didn't count for much. His mind still contained the elevation and floor plan of the building, as well as the intuitive impression he had of a corner of the building. When all the elements converged together, Luo Nan suddenly felt that the distant building was like a civilization of the previous generation that had been washed away by time. Only a rusted outer shell was left behind in its confrontation with the mighty forces of nature, heavy and ancient. Traces of an unruly industrial order could be seen on every corner of the building. It was incompatible with the hazy natural environment, but a compromise was finally achieved within this boundless darkness. This sudden feeling made Luo Nan open his notebook in an instant. He used a fluorescent pen to draw lines, capturing the intuitive impression that assaulted his face. After Xia Junping cheered, he turned his head to see Luo Nan's actions. So this person really did have a drawing fetish? But he felt a bit relieved in the blink of an eye. A person who was obsessed with a certain hobby like this shouldn't be a cold-hearted fellow. Xia Junping walked back with light hands and feet. He stuck his head out to take a look and saw that the surface of the paper was filled with simple and crude lines. If he didn't know the subject of the depiction beforehand, he absolutely wouldn't have connected Luo Nan's sketch with the jungle and the building before his eyes. But when the direction of the sketch became clear, he unexpectedly felt that it was quite interesting. Especially the structure that seemed to distort within the waves of water. It seemed to manifest some sort of incorporeal power. All right, let's not call it Picasso. How about Van Gogh? Luo Nan's sketch was drawn with a quick hand. He quickly closed his notebook and sighed in satisfaction. Luo Nan already had an even stronger interest in this building. He couldn't help but ask, who's the designer of this place? Xia Junping shrugged, then you've stumped me. This building has at least 20 years of history. I was still a little baby when it was built. You weren't even born yet. However. Everything is fine as long as there's a signal. The AI will certainly have the relevant basic information. Xia Junping's previous experience of crying out for help had clearly suffocated him badly. He gnashed his teeth as he connected to the internet and asked for temporary authorization from the student council. From this moment on, he held absolute power over this damned laboratory. Sooner or later, I'll stuff that old bastard Yan Hong in there. I'll let him have a good taste. It doesn't matter which gutter he hides in. Xia Junping finally restarted the various system modules he had experimented with during this time. He searched for relevant information and found the original design that had been stored in an electronic file, including the designer's signature. He used the powerful function of his wristband to create an AR effect, causing an image to appear out of thin air. Independent designer, Bo Qingwen. Wow, look at this signature. It seems to be a woman. The handwriting is very beautiful. Xia Junping turned his head to size up the furnishings in the treehouse. He didn't see any particularly obvious female style. But the exquisite and comfortable design of the resting room on the next floor seemed to be able to verify this. Xia Junping became a bit excited, but he didn't receive a response from Luo Nan. He turned his head to look, but he saw Luo Nan staring at the designer's name displayed on the holographic screen, as well as the handwritten signature. Luo Nan didn't move an inch. Luo Nan's breathing seemed to be completely frozen along with the surrounding air. Chapter 53. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Nan. Junior Nan? Xia Junping called out in a probing manner, but he still didn't receive any response. Luo Nan stood in place in a daze. He finally moved after a dozen seconds. He looked around at the furnishings within the narrow space once more. It was just that the coordination between his head and body seemed to have been completely lost. He was as stiff as a rusty machine. It was as if he could exhaust his last bit of battery at any moment and die here eternally. But in the end, Luo Nan was still able to control his body. He held on to the inner wall of the tree hole and slowly walked down the stairs. His mind was in a trance, as if he was sleepwalking. Xia Junping wanted to follow, but he stopped after some thought. He continued to operate his wristband and rummaged through the Order Club's database. Sure enough, there was something new. Bo Qingwen, a doctoral student of the 72nd Institute of Architecture and Design, a senior member of the Order Club. The electronic photo from the early days was of a delicate and pretty woman. It was very fitting with the layout of the tree house. Perhaps it was because of the first impression, but Xia Junping felt that this woman's facial features were quite similar to Luo Nan's. He already had a 70 to 80% certainty in his heart. Right when he was pondering whether or not he should confirm it a step further, his wristband displayed a call. Xia Junping grinded his teeth when he saw the number. He opened his mouth and was about to start cursing when he thought of Luo Nan downstairs. He forcefully swallowed the curses back into his stomach. He carefully walked to the window and growled, "Who's San? You motherfucker want to kill me? You're still talking? What kind of bullshit is that protective system? A new investor? Are you sure? Here to take a look? At this time?" Xia Junping was a bit surprised, but he was able to control his emotions. He pondered for a moment and gave some instructions to the other side. In the end, he gave a solemn warning. "Remember, if something happens again, I'll smash your door." Xia Junping walked down softly and quietly after concluding this matter. He stuck his head out from the stairwell to look down. He didn't dare to turn on the lights. The tree hole was dusky. He only borrowed a bit of daylight to barely see Luo Nan standing in the center of the resting room. He could touch the four walls with a slight stretch of his hand. But for some reason, he maintained a rigid posture of touching but not touching. It was as if he wanted to embrace an incorporeal shadow in the darkness. In the end, Luo Nan's figure slowly fell down, gradually submerging into the darkness. Only his faintly trembling back could be seen, like the bottom of a flipped boat that could sink at any moment. Xie Junping didn't want to continue watching, so he quietly walked back and waited in front of the window. As time passed, the sky grew darker and darker. He couldn't help but scratch his head as he considered the information provided by Husan. The sound of footsteps rang out while she was in a dilemma. Luo Nan appeared at the top of the stairs. His face couldn't be seen clearly due to the dim lighting. Xie Junping was delighted. He was just about to open his mouth when he discovered that Luo Nan wasn't paying any attention to him at all. Luo Nan was still like a wandering spirit. He walked all the way to the open table and hesitated for a moment. In the end, he extended his arm over and picked up the base of the round plate on the table. He entered into a daze again. Fine. Let's wait a little longer. Even Xie Junping's breathing slowed down. He just hoped that Luo Nan would return to normal soon. Senior, I'll have to trouble you with something. The sudden voice startled Xie Junping. Truthfully speaking, he really wasn't used to Luo Nan's gentle tone. Moreover, Luo Nan's voice was a bit hoarse and nasal. Could it be that he was crying? There was a subtle mismatch between the Luo Nan before his eyes and the Luo Nan in his memories. Xie Junping was a bit stupefied, but Luo Nan taking the initiative to communicate with him was a good thing. He went, twice and hurriedly responded, go ahead. Go ahead. Love go little say Netku, I've already submitted an application to the Order Club. I'll have to trouble Senior to approve it. Okay. No problem. This was the reason why Xie Junping dragged Luo Nan over. Naturally, he had prepared this long ago. Right now, Junior, you're a new member of the Order Club. Including you, the club currently has a total of 13 members. Of course, you don't need to worry about the others. They'll be expelled from school at the very least. It's just a few procedural requirements for the club's operations. You'll need to put in a bit of effort for the next 2 days. I'll accompany you for a lap. Xie Junping's head was lowered as he spoke, but he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He raised his head and saw Luo Nan turn to face him, bowing over 90 degrees. Xie Junping was so shocked that he nearly fell out of the viewing window. He hurriedly helped Luo Nan up. Oh my. Junior Nan, what are you doing? Luo Nan looked straight at Xie Junping's face and spoke softly. Today, Senior took the initiative to introduce me to the club. Only then did I have the chance to know that my mother still had this work gear when she was alive. I was even able to see her former residence. Xie Junping was a bit embarrassed. This is a coincidence. It's not like this. My mother had already passed away when I was born. Before I could remember anything, my grandfather had gone mad and my father had left. My other family members didn't know much about my mother. Therefore, 16 years of time couldn't compare to today's understanding of my birth mother. No matter what Senior did in the past, I, Luo Nan, will never forget this favor. Luo Nan spoke in a genteel manner, but each word was solemn. Each word was true. Xie Junping really couldn't stand this proper and serious attitude. Plus, he felt that Luo Nan's current mental state was a bit abnormal. He pondered for a long time before finally asking cautiously, "It really is Auntie?" Luo Nan nodded slightly. He didn't know what method he used, but he charged the projector photo frame with electricity. Right now it could be turned on normally, displaying a picture of a woman in her daily life. It seemed that she was right under this withered tree. Back then, the water level of the wetlands had yet to submerge the sandbar. She was dressed in simple and casual attire. She leaned lightly against the withered tree, pointed at the camera, and had a bright and radiant smile. She was a bit more lively and vivid than in the file photo, and she possessed a unique sense of self-confidence and sharpness. Xia Junping didn't feel good in his heart when he thought about how such a talented and beautiful woman had died young. He didn't know what to say for a time. He could only console her dryly. Auntie passed away early. She didn't leave many things behind. Junior, you were able to find this inheritance. This is a great thing. You should be happy. It was only at this time that Xia Junping suddenly remembered. The Luo Nan before his eyes was only a 16-year-old youth. After stripping away his usual cold and hard outer shell, what was revealed was only a heart riddled with scars because of the death of his father and mother and the shattering of his family. All right, this was too sour. But Xia Junping really found it hard to get used to this, especially when he saw Luo Nan's situation. He hated that he couldn't stay here tonight. This wouldn't do. Xia Junping gritted his teeth and tried to communicate with Luo Nan. Junior Nan, there's a problem right now. In the past, Gear was mainly occupied by the Construction Society and the Mystic Arts Research Society. But now a new financial backer has suddenly appeared. He's determined to get Gear. Today, he's coming over to investigate the scene. I've joined the society. Can they kick me out? They won't go that far, then it's fine. It was very clear that the current Luo Nan's entire mind was immersed in the emotions of remembering his mother. He didn't care about any other news, including the Mystic Arts Research Society. Xia Junping suddenly felt very tired. Weren't you the one who came up with the ideas before? Inexplicably, it was now his turn to rack his brains with all his might. He checked and filled in the gaps, including reminding Luo Nan to pay attention. The problem is that there's only one way to get out of here. We can't let those people block us here. Chapter 54. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Show.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Luo Nan was stupefied when he heard this. He finally understood the most crucial problem. He looked around the treehouse and was silent for a few seconds before he finally made a decision. Let's go back first. Looking at the projection album in his hand, he hesitated for a long time before putting it back in place to avoid destroying the original layout of the treehouse. He then closed the bionic bark on the viewing window to make sure that no one would discover it. Luo Nan's gaze turned to Xia Junping after he finished doing all this. Xia Junping immediately raised his hand and swore, I will absolutely not mention the treehouse to outsiders. This matter will rot in my stomach. Luo Nan didn't say a word. He just bowed once more. Ever since Luo Nan had solemnly expressed his thanks last time, Luo Nan had displayed an even more respectful attitude towards Xia Junping. Frankly speaking, this made Xia Junping quite happy in his heart. Luo Nan was the first to walk down with Xia Junping following behind. Perhaps it was because he was in a refreshed mood, but an inexplicable idea popped up in Xia Junping's mind. He borrowed his courage to poke Luo Nan's shoulder. Brother Nan, if you don't mind, can I leave a camera? Huh? Luo Nan suddenly turned around and stared at his face. A person's mentality was strange. In the past, Xia Junping would definitely be nervous at times like this, and he might not even be able to speak a complete sentence. But after feeling Luo Nan's respect, his courage rose correspondingly. His train of thought became clearer under Luo Nan's gaze. I mean, Brother Nan, don't you think this house is a bit too clean? There were many mosquitoes in the wetland, and it was very humid. If it was not cleaned up for a few days, it would be impossible to see. But look at this place. It's clean and refreshing. Of course, it's beautiful, but I'm afraid. Luo Nan's eyes didn't blink at all. He spoke with a hoarse voice, expressing Xia Junping's unspoken meaning. Someone has already discovered this place, and they've been living here for a long time? Ahem, I'm just saying. Love goes small say Netku after all, there's an 80% chance that Gear's AI cleaning system won't be able to reach here. Luo Nan didn't speak again, but his gaze drifted a bit. It was unknown what he was thinking. After a few seconds, he turned around and slowly walked down. His fingers were stuck to the inner wall of the tree hole until he reached the beginning of the stone steps. It's here. There used to be a door here, but now it's been filled with bionic materials and sealed. Xia Junping shone the light on the surface and observed it for a while before agreeing, maybe this is a normal door left behind when the sand continent was still around. Then the water level rose and it was destroyed. The water level is rising, Luo Nan's voice grew hoarser and hoarser. It was as if a blade was stuck in his throat. It became more and more difficult for him to speak. When did the water level rise? Xia Junping went online to search for information. Around 1987. At that time, the underground rock strata had ruptured, and an underground river had changed its course, causing the average water level of the wetland to rise by nearly half a meter. The lake area where the withered tree's sandbar was located had risen by a full 7 meters. 87 years. It seemed that senior sister Bo Qingwen had died due to a difficult childbirth, which happened 80 years ago. In any case, it was impossible for her to remodel the tree hole 7 years later. Once his thoughts were sorted out, Xia Junping hissed. There really is someone. Yes, there really is someone. Who is it? Luo Nan responded with a hoarse voice. He slowly bent down and touched the narrow secret passage that was clearly excavated later. Xia Junping came to a realization. There was also this passageway. There was a 99% chance that it was excavated at the same time as the ceiling of the door. It was also done to avoid the rising water level and make it easier to enter and exit. This explained the difference from Bo Qingwen's original design. Xia Junping saw Luo Nan bend over, seeming to be pondering over the structure of the secret passage. He shone a light beam to make it easier for Luo Nan to investigate. But when the light beam shone over, Luo Nan realized something was wrong. Right now, Luo Nan was indeed pondering, but his fingers were unconsciously digging at the junction between the tree hole and the secret passage. This monotonous movement was not so much a result of inertia, but rather a representation of extreme emotions. Before, Luo Nan was heavy and sad, but he was relatively calm. His occasional ups and downs were like the night tide of the seaside. It was the rhythm of normal emotions. But right now, he was suppressed and irritable. He was like a wounded beast that saw the enemy that injured him intrude into his territory. He was filled with irritation and even savage emotions. Xia Junping was really worried that Luo Nan would dig out his fingernails. He gingerly shook the light beam. The change in light startled Luo Nan and he suddenly turned his head. Xia Junping shockingly saw that Luo Nan's eyes were blood red right now. The blood red wasn't from soaking in tears, but from the accumulation of berserk emotions. It was as if he wanted to devour someone. Xia Junping felt his calf cramp when he saw this. He unconsciously took a step back. However, Luo Nan's emotions seemed to have calmed down a bit under the illumination of the light. He stopped his monotonous, hair-raising movements and spoke in a low voice, "Senior, where were we just now?" There's someone living in the tree hole." They sealed the front door and even dug out a secret passage that leads to the laboratory. Luo Nan shook his head. The underwater corridor is a dead end. It's normally completely unobstructed. It's too conspicuous for outsiders to come in. Therefore, it can't be anyone else. It can only be an internal member of the society or the laboratory. Xia Junping thought about it and agreed. This made more sense. But when he thought deeper, there was such a person in the Order Club. He normally lived and socialized within the club. But when no one was paying attention, he would quietly pass through the underwater corridor and enter the tree hole. He would engage in some shady business. The most important thing was that this span of time could have lasted for 7 to 8 years. 10 years. All the way until now. Just thinking about it made Luo Nan's heart go cold. Xia Junping suddenly had a thought, motherfucker. It can't be that someone suddenly came in from the other side while they were drilling the secret passage. Or maybe they could swim and come in from the viewing hole, the thought was born. He looked at the pitch-black entrance of the secret passage and the spiraling staircase behind him. His entire body felt unwell. Luo Nan didn't seem to think too much. He slowly stood up and bowed towards Xia Junping. I'll have to trouble Senior with the matter of the camera installation. If there's still someone, I want to see just who in the world it is. Xia Junping was actually a bit flustered in his heart. But having Luo Nan by his side was more or less comforting. He took a deep breath. Okay. I'll install it right now. You have ready-made tools? I brought a bit. Xia Junping was a bit embarrassed, but he still took out 2 miniature cameras the size of rice grains from his wristband. This group of second-generation rich kids would sometimes play with absurd tricks. They relied on these. This sort of portable miniature machine couldn't be any simpler to install. They just needed to find a position with a relatively wide field of view, press it, and it would stick. It wouldn't fall off easily. Xia Junping used both cameras. This little toy can achieve real-time video transmission. A single camera can work for over 3 months. Actually, looking at the degree of cleanliness, if we're lucky, we should be able to get results in a day or 2. While Xia Junping was working, Luo Nan walked up and down the entire tree hole space. But he didn't discover any more clues. His mood was clearly even more depressed right now. He didn't say a word as he made his way through the secret passage and entered the underwater corridor. Xia Junping followed cautiously. He kept the surveillance screen open at all times for fear that a murderer who had been hiding for many years would suddenly jump out from behind him. Chapter 55. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Show.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Jumping down from the secret passage, Xia Junping looked up. The camouflage film blocked his line of sight perfectly, making him look like a piece of alloy steel. Who would have thought that there was a short and narrow secret passage that led to this strange tree hole space? Luo Nan didn't say a word. He silently made his way back. Xia Junping glanced at the surveillance screen once more. He hurried 2 steps to walk shoulder to shoulder with Luo Nan. But soon, he regretted his decision. At this time, all the system modules in the laboratory had returned to normal. When they returned, it was no longer dark. Inside the glass wall, under the special black light, the dark purple light made this area of water look dreamy and illusory. But to Xia Junping, this long and tedious road was simply torture. The mental state of Luo Nan next to her was abnormal. Along the way, Luo Nan continued the oppressive and impatient state he had in the tree hole. He was constantly spinning in circles in his own thoughts. Sometimes, he would stop abruptly and turn his head to look at the long corridor behind him, as well as the increasingly gloomy waters beside him. He would be in a daze for a long time. Every time this happened, the blood-red color in his eyes would be bright and glistening, making it hard for others to look at him directly. There were even several times when Xia Junping could hear the sound of his teeth clenching. After walking and stopping for a few minutes, Xia Junping became even more certain. Luo Nan was about to go crazy. He didn't doubt in the slightest that if someone dared to say, "I'm the person who lives in the tree hole," right now, Luo Nan would immediately pounce over and tear that person's throat to shreds. Then he would roar and interrogate, "What the hell are you doing over there?" What was he thinking? If this continued, Xia Junping felt that he would go crazy. Something had to be done. Xia Junping racked his brains to recall some of the communication classes he had attended. He tried to think of a way to express himself. After hesitating for a while, he finally said, "Junior brother, do you know very little about Auntie?" Luo Nan was clearly stupefied. His circle of self had been broken, and this power came from the nostalgia he had for his mother. This wondrous emotion was like a surging river that washed over his heart. It was slightly painful, but it wasn't bad. A long time passed before Luo Nan nodded, "Yes, very few. There's a way." Xia Junping was overjoyed and continued, "Auntie doesn't have any relatives?" Luo Nan continued to respond, "My mother was a war orphan. She grew up in an orphanage." Xia Junping almost choked, but after calculating the time, Bo Qingwen was indeed born before the Third World War. There were many such situations in that generation. No matter what, the conversation had finally begun. "Is it in the local area? If you want to gather more information, Junior, I have some power in Xia City." Xia Junping took charge again, and the results were actually pretty good. Luo Nan bowed towards him. Thank you, senior. Here it comes again. She felt that Luo Nan was like a person from the previous century. Or perhaps he acted completely according to the patterns of the books. Yep. Perhaps this was the case. It was just that his cold face matched well with his actions, giving people the illusion that he was relatively mature. Thinking of this, Xia Junping was even more confident about this exchange. He waved his hand and said, actually, I really admire Auntie. To be able to single-handedly design gear, and even after more than 20 years, people are still fighting over it. I even thought it was the masterpiece of some great master. This is also the first time I've heard of it. Then, Brother Nan, what did you know before? Didn't your family mention anything about Auntie? The sudden silence nearly made Xia Junping think that he had outsmarted himself. But in the end, Luo Nan still opened his mouth. Mom passed away before I was born, you said it before. Hold on. Why did these words sound a bit strange? Before Xia Junping could think it through, he heard Luo Nan speak. Mom and him met at Acumen College. They went together to the wilderness and met up with my grandfather. At the time, my aunt had a terrible relationship with them. She knew very little. Luo Nan's words were a bit incoherent, and there were some subtle references. Xia Junping was able to understand after combining the information he had gathered before. Luo Nan's parents probably met and fell in love while studying at Acumen College. They went together to the wilderness to assist Luo Nan's grandfather in his research. And at the time, Luo Nan's current guardian, his aunt, didn't have a good relationship with his family. She didn't know much about the relevant circumstances. It was naturally hard for Luo Nan to obtain relevant information about his mother when his grandfather was insane and his father was missing. Luo Nan subconsciously reached out his hand as he spoke. His fingertips made contact with the glass wall, emitting a muffled sound of friction. I only knew one thing about my mother since I was young. She passed away before I was born. It was these words again, and a strange feeling emerged once more. Xia Junping pondered back and forth twice before he finally realized what the problem was. How could she have given birth to a child when she was already dead? He had heard that in the past, when medical conditions were relatively backward, there were cases of misfortune and dystocia. The mother had already passed away, but the child was still preserved. Luo Nan was probably like this. Xia Junping believed that he had understood the crux of the matter. He was just about to continue the topic when he saw Luo Nan pull out a highlighter pen from his black notebook. He drew an oval-shaped cabinet on the glass wall. A slender silhouette of a person sat next to it. The lines of the drawing were simple to the extreme, but the content expressed was extremely straightforward and clear. This is my mother. Luo Nan's voice was strangely gentle. I've never seen her with my own eyes, but I've heard people say that this is how she gave birth to me. Huh? Xia Junping was a bit confused. It said that it was June 80. I was 7 months old. I was in my mother's stomach. The base was in chaos, and my mother was heavily injured. She sealed off the laboratory and used the only health pod inside to save me. Look, I'm here. Luo Nan drew a small circle on the oval, which was the center of the health pod. Xia Junping opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Actually, he originally wanted to ask how a fetus was placed in the health pod inside the stomach. But when the words reached the tip of his tongue, he suddenly understood the tragic process. He was stupefied in place all of a sudden. Luo Nan lightly pressed the edge of the silhouette. His tone was still so gentle that it was frightening. I can't see her, but she's always been here. This is my mother. Xia Junping looked stupidly at the fluorescent lines. He didn't know how to respond for a time. Luo Nan walked forward and changed to a different area. He drew a few more lines, borrowing the illumination of the black light to form an oppressive shadow. At the front of the shadow was a prison-like structure. A person sat upright inside, and next to him was a small figure. 3 years later, my grandfather was sued, imprisoned, and went crazy. The laboratory was gone, the experimental materials were gone, and the research results were gone. At this time, a certain someone was gone as well. Luo Nan gave Xia Junping a strange smile. He should be here, but he's not. This is my father. They just happened to walk to the starting point of the underwater corridor at this time. Luo Nan put away the fluorescent pen and bowed towards Xia Junping once more. I just said some senseless words. I've troubled you, senior. Clearly, Luo Nan understood Xia Junping's thoughts. Conversely, Xia Junping was finally able to peek into a corner of Luo Nan's tortuous and gloomy inner world. Moreover, Luo Nan's emotions were clearly much calmer. This could be considered a contribution. Xia Junping let out a secret breath. Right when he was about to respond, the voices of people came from not too far away. 7 or 8 people crowded into the surrounding resting area of the underwater corridor. Some people even greeted Xia Junping. Brother Ping, we're here. Chapter 56. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. SpeakNet provides you with wonderful novels to read. Xia Junping frowned as he looked over. Hu Huaying of the student council was among the people who came. He was also Hu Saner. He could be considered Xia Junping's best friend and ally. He was the one who greeted Xia Junping. In addition, there were 2 unfamiliar faces. The other 4 people were the upper echelons of the construction society. Even the society's president, Lang Ding, had come. Xia Junping suddenly had an ominous premonition when he saw this situation. Xia Junping grumbled in his heart, but he still put on a smiling face and went forward to greet them. This kind of social work was his forte. Moreover, he didn't need to face Luo Nan for the time being. He immediately felt the world open up to him. He could do as he pleased, returning from the hellish difficulty to the novice setting. Even though there were 7 people in front of him, he was still able to greet them with familiarity without the slightest bit of confusion. He also inquired clearly about the identities of the 2 unfamiliar people. One was a lawyer with the surname Zhu. He was the financial backer's representative. His attitude was calm and indifferent. He had the aloof demeanor of a society elite. The other was a bodyguard. He had a dark skin and a swift and fierce body. He had a rather cool professional appearance. He ignored everyone. Both of them were people who had been working hard in society, and their ages were much older than the students present. It was reasonable to say that the school's society work office should send out a corresponding person to receive them in this kind of situation. Or perhaps a teacher consultant of the relevant society should come forward. But Xia Junping didn't see any of these. Xia Junping felt that something was wrong more and more. Soon, his premonition became reality. While he was exchanging pleasantries with Lawyer Zhu, he directly said, "The Rainbow Fund is quite satisfied with the Construction Society's development plan and personnel composition. They are willing to carry out a more practical cooperation. Injecting capital to purchase a landmark building on the North Bank is also a pretty good investment. I hope to obtain the cooperation of the school and the student council in the relevant procedures and arrangements." Xia Junping laughed it off, but he had cursed Hu Saner 1,000 times in his heart. You can't even explain this kind of thing clearly. It's true that the new financial backer has arrived, but he's not directly entering the scene and starting from scratch. He's here to assist the construction society. Damn. I originally thought that the Twin Dragon Society was going to become the Three Kingdom Kill. But looking at the situation, it was clearly one-sided. He grinned. When he shook hands with Lang Ding, he said, "I won't mention anything else, but I have to say that I'm impressed by the Construction Society's ability to attract sponsors." As the chairman of a large society, Lang Ding was not a particularly domineering person. At this moment, he only smiled. It's fine. Bringing in a new investor will make the society's capital structure more reasonable, and it will be easier to manage. Good luck. Xia Junping laughed and laughed, but in his heart, he screamed, "Trouble." He turned his head to glance at Luo Nan. This master still had a downcast appearance. He didn't care about the group of uninvited guests at all. Indeed, according to Luo Nan's logic, as long as he was in the order club, within the building that his mother had designed, it didn't matter who took control of this place in the end. My lord, how could it be that easy? Xie Junping cursed inwardly, feeling a headache coming on. Whether it was the Construction Society or the Mystic Arts Research Society, none of these large-scale societies were easy to deal with. If you didn't do your job well beforehand, a small club member would have plenty of ways to make you lose your job. The reason why Xie Junping dared to guarantee Luo Nan before was because he had already given the Mystic Arts Research Society a heads up. The road ahead and the road behind were completely paved. As for the Construction Society, it really wasn't easy to handle. Lang Ding was easy to talk to, but the structure of this society was quite complicated. There were many thorns in the executive committee. Let's not talk about other things. That damned dog Li Xuecheng was the vice president of the Construction Society. He possessed a lot of influence within the society. If Luo Nan really entered the Construction Society and bumped into Li Xuecheng, wouldn't a mysterious campus death case occur? He had to think of a plan when he got back. Xie Junping didn't have the mood to stay any longer when his thoughts reached this point. He spoke a few more words of nonsense and pulled Luo Nan to leave. But who knew that Lawyer Zhu of the Rainbow Fund would call him to a stop after just a few steps? Head Xie, there's something I need to consult you about. Xie Junping was the head of the Society Activities Department of the Student Council, but there were very few people who directly addressed him by his title on campus. He was stunned for a moment before turning his head and putting on a smiling face. Lawyer Zhu, please don't hesitate to ask. Lawyer Zhu nodded slightly. It's related to the assets of the society. From the looks of things, the Order Club has already entered a state of idleness. And it will take at least 3 months to half a year to complete the procedures. This is quite unfavorable for preserving the value of the existing assets. Therefore, we suggest that we contact the competing society and hold a coordination meeting. We will officially count and seal all of the assets of the Order Club to reduce depreciation losses and avoid additional consumption. We hope that the Student Council will be able to coordinate and organize in the middle to complete the relevant procedures as soon as possible. Xie Junping's brows furrowed. If you seal off the society, where will the master next to me go? Lawyer Zhu spoke without waiting for a response. In addition, we also hope that the school can conduct a strict examination of the procedures. We just paid attention to the Order Club Society website and discovered that a new member has actually entered the society. Can the society still recruit members during this period of lockdown? We need an explanation for the reason for joining the society during the auction of the society assets. F*CK. This guy was specifically looking for trouble. Xie Junping's face darkened in an instant. At the same time, he found it very strange. He didn't remember offending the Rainbow Fund or this litigator surnamed Zhu. Logically speaking, the Rainbow Fund was a very famous investment fund in Xia City. There was no need to be so stingy, right? He shot a glance at Luo Nan. Luo Nan had clearly heard Lawyer Zhu's words. He had already raised his head, but his gaze wasn't directed at the spokesperson. Instead, it fell onto the body of the dark-skinned bodyguard by Lawyer Zhu's side. Something was wrong. Although Xie Junping didn't understand what was going on, he definitely wouldn't budge an inch on this matter. He replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Lawyer Zhu might not know, but according to the school's procedures, the Order Club hasn't been dissolved yet. It's only managed by the school's student council. Its main function is still to maintain the club's normal operations. Recruiting members is also within reason. Lawyer Zhu smiled. All of the original members of the society have entered the detention process. It's hard to believe that the society can still operate normally. Otherwise, the school wouldn't have launched an asset auction. Based on the escrow agreement, our understanding is that the so-called escrow should be in a situation where the society has substantially disappeared, so as to fully realize the preservation of assets. If Minister Xia thinks that our understanding is wrong, we can also convene a coordination meeting to consult the opinions of other bidders, and we can choose the greatest common divisor. Xie Junping was slightly stunned. He really didn't have the guts to hold that coordination meeting. Lawyer Zhu's gaze shifted to fall on Luo Nan's face. But then he quickly exchanged glances with the dark-skinned bodyguard by his side. The latter nodded slightly before speaking. So this is the student Luo Nan who just joined the club? I just saw the announcement of your joining the club on the website. I'll take the liberty to ask. What's your reason for joining the club? Did you go through the relevant investigations? Did you have an understanding of the Order Club's circumstances before joining the club? Luo Nan held his notebook in his arms when faced with this interrogation. He was cold and quiet, not uttering a single word. But Xia Junping couldn't bear to watch. He shouted, "Hey hey hey. That's 3 sentences already. If you want a reason, ask me. Who knows better than me?" Chapter 57. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Speak Net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Xia Junping shifted the focus of the conflict back to himself, but in his opinion, perhaps he had saved Lawyer Zhu's life. When he thought of this, he felt a sense of superiority from a higher position. Lawyer Zhu, if you say that the Order Club continues to operate and recruit new members is a loss of resources, then I won't admit it. Do we students eat pig's feed? Hu-san, the Order Club's qualifications to recruit new members have just been restored in the new semester, right? Hu Huaying was a bit dizzy from the sudden intensification of the conflict. Xia Junping had already dragged him into the water, and their many years of alliance hadn't been in vain. He immediately nodded. It was restored on September 1st. Xia Junping was fully aware that this was a sign of a lag in the execution process, but he treated it as evidence and threw it at Lawyer Zhu's face. Perhaps Lawyer Zhu doesn't understand the internal situation of the school, so I might as well inform you. In the past few years, the Order Club has been courting disaster. Aside from last year's financial problems, there was also an experimental accident in 1993, and their membership qualifications were revoked. But this qualification was officially restored on September 1st this year. What does this mean? It means that the school still hopes to give the Order Club a chance, to let this old club that has existed since the school's founding preserve a bit of its mark. Even if it can't escape the fate of merging in the end, it won't completely disappear. At least there's still a legacy. Xia Junping originally didn't believe these absurd words, but the more he spoke, the more excited he became. He was even a bit moved. Because at this moment, he suddenly thought of Bo Qingwen. He thought of this talented female senior who single-handedly designed gear. After leaving behind her iconic work, she left for the distant wilderness, and then perished in such a tragic and stirring manner. A club that once possessed such an outstanding person had to leave something behind, to let people remember something. He was doing exactly this. And so, Xia Junping's voice grew louder and louder. A newcomer makes an application, and the club approves it. Isn't that normal? I see that this student's application is sincere, and his reason is sufficient. He himself is also very outstanding. What's wrong with allowing him to join the club during the escrow period? Lawyer Zhu had seen this type of expression where emotions were greater than reason many times. Young people always like to be like this. He smiled and shook his head. Reason sufficient? Can you tell me the specifics? If it was before, Xia Junping might have encountered awkwardness, but today was different. He laughed heartily. Of course it's sufficient, it's sufficient. He directly pulled out the blueprint from the society's database and showed it to everyone through the projection equipment nearby. Gear, which is also the building we are in, was designed by our school's Architectural Design Institute's 72 PhD student, Ms. Bo Qingwen. The final construction was completed. This is the relevant electronic file, including Ms. Bo's personal signature. There shouldn't be any problems, right? Lawyer Zhu? Lawyer Zhu felt that something was amiss. He withdrew his smile and frowned. Xia Junping's heart skipped a beat when the black-faced bodyguard beside him glared at him coldly. This guy didn't look like a bodyguard, but more like an armed gangster. However, under the push of unprecedented emotions, Xia Junping quickly roused his spirit and boldly said, "Just by relying on this one work, gear, Ms. Bo Qingwen is the pride of our school. Unfortunately, Lady Bu passed away 6 years after completing this work. Unfortunately, the heavens were jealous of her talent. After that, Gear's personnel changed, and no one remembered that stunning senior sister from back then. Until today. Xia Junping walked with large strides to Luo Nan's side. He draped his arm over Luo Nan's shoulder, until today. Lady Bu's only son, student Luo Nan, has followed in his mother's footsteps and entered Acumen College to study. After a month of searching, he found his mother's work from back then. But he witnessed the decline of the Order Club and the lack of maintenance on gear. He was heartbroken and took the initiative to join the society, to contribute all of his strength, to let this legendary building radiate its splendor once more. Is this reason enough? Luo Nan shot a glance at the palm on his shoulder, but he didn't say anything in the end. The most difficult person to please didn't have any objections. Xia Junping's imposing manner rose with the tide. Junior Lang, Lawyer Zhu. Even though we know that the Order Club is likely to become history, Lady Bu's contributions to the school and student Luo Nan's contributions to his mother's honor should receive the school's support and encouragement. Even though this is my personal opinion, I'll say it here. If you have any objections, you can doubt it. Suing is no problem. Suing the student council, the alumni association, the parent conference, the president's office, and the board of directors is no exception. What's fake can't be real. What's real can't be fake. I really want to see who was able to sever the flesh and blood of Lady Bu and Junior Luo Nan. Who was able to destroy the mother-son affection between them? Who was able to trample the cultural inheritance of our school into the ground and ruin it? Xia Junping's imposing manner right now was truly earth-shattering. He glared and pointed at the irrelevant people. Junior Lang? Lang Ding smiled bitterly and waved his hand. He didn't want to clash with Xia Junping. Xia Junping looked at the most talkative person, Lawyer Zhu. Lawyer Zhu's face turned a bit green. He didn't respond immediately. It seemed that he was preparing his words. How could Xia Junping give him the chance? Right now his heart was carefree, indescribable with words. In the end, he just laughed out loud, put his arm around Luo Nan's shoulder, and swaggered off. This was an unprecedented victory. Xia Junping's eyes were practically brimming with hot tears before he had even walked a few steps. This was the first time he didn't look at the teleprompter. He didn't use his built-in earphones to give a passionate speech, okay? The effects were simply explosive. It was a pity. It was a pity that he wasn't able to record it. He wouldn't be able to recollect it in the future. Hold on. Perhaps there was a way. Xia Junping turned his head and asked, Junior Nan. My image this time. Give me a drawing. Sorry. Only now did Xia Junping discover that he had forgotten himself in his excitement just now. He was still holding Luo Nan's arm and hadn't let go yet. Xia Junping immediately shrunk his neck and hastily pulled his hand back when this old man's cold gaze swept over him. Who knew that Luo Nan would give him a thumbs up in the next moment? Senior, you're eloquent. Xia Junping coughed. He wanted to be a bit reserved. I've seen this bunch of litigators many times. It's Auntie and Junior Nan who gave me the confidence. In the end, he couldn't help but grin and laugh loudly. He couldn't control his mouth in the end. Speaking of which, Junior Nan. Just give me a drawing. It'd be a pity if you didn't keep it as a souvenir. Luo Nan actually didn't refuse. He just said, I'll go buy a flexible screen first. Xia Junping didn't expect Luo Nan to respond. He suddenly received this kind of response. He was stunned for a moment before becoming overjoyed. Actually, a portrait didn't count for much. But this represented that his friendship with Luo Nan had truly entered a new stage. He immediately slapped his chest. I'll buy this. No need. Thanks. Luo Nan laughed, but he quickly restrained himself. He lowered his head and flipped open the notebook. He went to the page of the flexible e-ink screen and looked at the cracked screen. A moment later, he opened the metal ring and removed the flexible e-ink screen. He weighed it in his hand and suddenly assumed a posture of wanting to throw it. Xia Junping was shocked to the side. He instinctively went to grab Luo Nan's arm. But who knew that Luo Nan himself would stop before he could exert his strength? He faced Xia Junping with a smile. Destroying hygiene isn't too good, right? Xia Junping fiercely nodded his head no matter what kind of craziness Luo Nan was having. He was fully aware of how Li Shuecheng had turned into a dead dog. So he could guess the importance of this flexible e-ink screen to Luo Nan. He couldn't help but worry that Luo Nan would make a choice that he would regret in the future due to his momentary emotions. If Luo Nan could figure it out by himself, then that would be for the best. Luo Nan muttered to himself for a moment. In the end, he placed the flexible e-ink screen back into the notebook and continued to walk forward. It was as if nothing had happened. Chapter 58. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Shuo.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Xia Junping's luxury car sped along the high-speed magnetic track. For a rich kid like him, a phantom being sealed was just an opportunity for the other collections in the garage to show themselves. Xia City had already entered the darkness of night outside the car window. It was rush hour, but the city was rarely congested. Over the past few decades, billions of tons of soil, steel, and other special materials had been used to build the magnificent metropolis according to the will of mankind. More than 200 million people were crammed into the limited land. But it could still operate efficiently. Just like transportation. From the ground to the sky, Xia City was divided into 20 layers of transportation. They were divided into hundreds of millions of different types of transportation. Even when the traffic was the most dense, it only took about 20 minutes to cover the 40 kilometers. Xia Junping volunteered to take Luo Nan home, so Luo Nan was happy and relaxed. He seized this time to familiarize himself with the newly purchased flexible e-ink screen, mainly the feel of the screen and the electronic pen. As for the other configurations, they were meaningless. When the external neuron seeped into it and connected to the battery module, the familiar interface that hadn't changed for 5 years appeared in front of him. However, the gear icon that still existed in the laboratory was nowhere to be seen, indicating that the special hardware and software foundation still had a certain impact on the external neuron. Luo Nan's finger stroked the original gear icon twice, then he opened the drawing software he hadn't used in a long time. At the top of the software interface was still the image of the burning wraith, and it still looked as malevolent and terrifying as before. But after experiencing the concise and abstract lines of the wraith sign, Luo Nan felt that this sketch was truly unbearable to look at. There were many mistakes and awkwardness. Shaking his head, he directly deleted the magical sketch and replaced it with the one that depicted the entrance of the nightclub. Hey. Delete this one as well. Change it to something prettier. Xia Junping just so happened to turn his head at this time. He only saw Luo Nan delete a picture, but he was unable to see the content clearly. Love goes small say Netku. However, he was very clear about what was going to happen next, so he immediately shouted. Luo Nan cast a glance at him and said in a lukewarm tone, "Pay attention to your driving. This is a high-speed magnetic track. How am I supposed to drive it?" Xia Junping put his hand on the steering wheel, but he received a warning from the car's AI, telling him to enter the conversion zone before adjusting the magnetic track to avoid a rear-end collision. Xia Junping had an innocent expression on his face. Luo Nan was disinclined to pay attention to him. He created a blank page on the drawing software and immediately put pen to paper. Xia Junping drew close with a whoosh. He saw Luo Nan use the digital pen to draw out the blurry shadows of the background. It was vaguely the internal layout of gear. Xia Junping was excited when he suddenly became stupefied. Who is he? That dark-skinned bodyguard? Why did you draw him? I've seen it before. Luo Nan sketched out the outline of the dark-faced bodyguard. He wanted to add a few fine strokes, but he was a bit hesitant. For him, this was a rather rare situation. Xia Junping was still a little unconvinced. Who is he? I saw it on the ship Lanshan yesterday. It's probably Quantum Corporation's. Burner. Xia Junping's chin smashed into his own shoulder. It should be. Back on the warship, it was this dark-faced man who dragged Quantum Corporation's deep blue walker armor. He drove past Luo Nan's side. The two of them made eye contact, and the dark-faced man even sealed his outer armor with a membrane, as if he was guarding against a thief. The process could not be considered pleasant. Xie Junping was drenched in cold sweat. It seemed that he had clashed with the dark-faced man's gaze when he was passionately giving his speech. If the dark-faced man were to slap him, his recently upgraded mouth would probably shatter into pieces. In comparison, Quantum Corporation's deterrent power wasn't as direct. Luo Nan just shook his head at Xie Junping's performance. He flipped over the page and put his pen to paper once more. This time it really was Xie Junping's image. Even though it was clearly a gift, Luo Nan didn't deliberately add more ink. It was the same as before, a few strokes, and the image appeared clearly. This person had his arm around Xie Junping's shoulder while waving his arm. He seemed excited, angry, and a bit crazy. But the arm around Xie Junping's neck and the shadow on his flank made this somewhat out-of-control action turn into a somewhat upright and unyielding guardian. Xie Junping was still yelling, "How could I be this crazy?" But after seeing the overall composition, he became happier the more he looked. This continued until he was grinning from ear to ear. He was satisfied to the extreme. In the end, there was only one point of dissatisfaction. That's you on the side, right? Why didn't you draw it? I'm not good at self-portraits. Luo Nan responded simply and immediately sent this picture over. He didn't care what Xie Junping did with it. And then Luo Nan selected the two new sketches he had drawn as well as the ones he had accumulated before. He pressed on the screen for a few seconds and the second layer of the drawing software opened up. It was the true appearance. He had tried it yesterday in the confinement room of the warship and failed. Today he switched to a different machine and everything went smoothly. The main body of the second layer was the tetrahedron on the title page of his grandfather's notebook. It was just that it didn't have an inscribed sphere or an outer scribed sphere. Instead, it was divided into 5 roughly equal layers. It rotated within the gray background. Xie Junping's gaze shifted over. He was a bit curious, Maslow. This interface really did look very close to the diagram of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This theory arranged a person's needs from low to high, from basic to complex. It was like a staircase that was arranged into 5 layers. As long as one had a bit of common sense in sociology and psychology, they wouldn't be unfamiliar with this classical theory and related diagram from the last century. Xie Junping pointed and said, from bottom to top. Physiology, safety, social interaction, respect, and self-realization. Its students, employees, technicians, clergymen, and politicians. So vulgar. I'm saying that these occupations can be arranged in a staircase. Luo Nan didn't explain. Right now he had selected a dozen or so sketches, and they all moved into the enclosed space of the tetrahedron. There were at least several hundred similar artworks scattered within. Within the enclosed space, all the sketches were scaled down. They began to flip up and down as new sketches entered. It looked like a marvelous card set that was repeatedly shuffled and rearranged under the drive of the software. Several seconds later, the positions of the several hundred artworks within the card shuffling machine were determined. The vast majority of them were arranged in the bottom 2 layers. Occasionally there was a 3rd layer, but the 4th and 5th layers were all blank. I can play with them like tarot cards? A fortune teller? Which company made this software? Xie Junping was attracted by the marvelous changes in the interface. His mind was filled with questions. At the same time, he opened his eyes wide and strove to find his own image. It's my father's work. Xie Junping immediately became honest. He roughly understood Luo Nan's temperament now. He knew that Luo Nan wouldn't be in a good mood as long as it was related to his father. Luo Nan was much quieter for the rest of the journey. The flying car arrived at Blue Bay Community at approximately 7:15. This was a bit later than the usual time to get home. Luo Nan bid farewell to Xie Junping and walked into the community. Soon a scratching noise rang above his head. The familiar rhythm indicated that it was ink greeting him. Luo Nan didn't raise his head as he walked into the apartment building's elevator. He opened his notebook after choosing his floor and stared at the flexible e-ink screen. He stared blankly at the special interface of the second floor. Then he sneered. That coward would forever shrink his head and tail even though he was declaring his existence. The drawing software was like this. The external neuron was like this. The tree hole space. Was it like this? Luo Nan didn't know, but the burning pain in his heart could not be clearer. The elevator reached the floor and the metal door opened. Luo Nan closed his notebook with a bang and walked out with large strides. The home AI sensed his existence and opened the front door after confirming it. Luo Nan stepped inside, but he was slightly startled. The lights in the living room were on. A middle-aged lady was sitting on the sofa, handling business through her wristband. She raised her head when she heard the door open. She looked straight at him with an expressionless face. Chapter 59. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Shaw.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Luo Nan immediately stood at attention. Aunt, the middle-aged lady on the sofa was Luo Nan's aunt, Luo Shuqing. She was small and thin, with a plain face and a quiet and serious temperament. Luo Nan hung his head as usual in front of this elder. Auntie, you came from so far away? There's someone who just won't budge no matter how much I ask. So, I came over to pay my respects. Mrs. Luo Shuqing's poisonous tongue was as sharp as ever. It immediately made Luo Nan speechless. It was only then that he realized why it was so easy to pass the inspection last night. His aunt had probably already made up her mind to come here for a surprise inspection. Well, that was my aunt's style. Luo Shuqing looked at her watch and stood up. Let's go. Your uncle has already prepared dinner and is waiting for us. She didn't give Luo Nan any chance to object. Luo Nan still wanted to struggle a bit. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Since you know it's troublesome, don't go looking for trouble. Luo Shuqing walked to Luo Nan's side. She was a head shorter than her skinny nephew, but her imposing manner was a head higher. These are extraordinary times. You're extremely daring. You live in a high-rise apartment and aren't afraid of the building collapsing. But your uncle and I are old. We're scared witless. We're counting on you to go back and look after us. Luo Nan gaped, but he discovered that he didn't have the strength to argue. He really didn't have the strength. He had been working non-stop for 40 hours, and he hadn't closed his eyes once during this time. He faced the burning wraith, the burner, the ability users, and the secrets of the external neuron and gear. Countless information poured in and burst forth, and there was also the intense washing of emotions due to his mother and coward. He had practically overdrafted all of his energy. At this moment, he felt as if he had just returned home after a long and arduous march. Then, in the face of his aunt, who had always treated him as her own daughter, in the face of a rare family member who could completely relax, why should he argue and torment himself? In a moment of stupefaction, Luo Shuqing had already forcefully pulled Luo Nan's shoulder to face the door. Everyone, time is precious. Let's go. The familiar, unyielding, and affectionate action made the corner of Luo Nan's mouth twitch. He wanted to reveal a smile and announce his failure in front of his aunt. This was his usual routine, and it was what made his aunt most proud of him. Love go small say net chew, but halfway through, he couldn't go any further. Because at this moment, the fatigue, hardship, pressure, and most importantly, the uncontrollable complex emotions that had accumulated over the past 2 days all rushed to his head, roaring as he searched for an opportunity to vent them. It seemed that any slight tug on the facial nerves would cause the fragile dam to collapse, and everything would flow out. There was an instant when Luo Nan even wanted to drag his aunt back to school. He wanted to point out gear and the tree hole for her to see. He wanted to ask her if she felt the same way he did. However, when he thought about how his aunt knew almost nothing about his mother, this impulse disappeared. Some things were destined to be shouldered by oneself. No one would be able to fully accept and understand your feelings. The fact that he was able to tell Xie Junping so much today was already a sign of him losing control of his emotions. It would be difficult for him to do so again. 100 thoughts crossed Luo Nan's mind. In the end, Luo Nan just slightly raised his head to avoid letting his aunt see the sorry appearance of him losing control of his facial expression. But how to resolve this extremely unnatural movement was beyond his ability. Just as he was feeling awkward, his wristband vibrated. Luo Nan turned around in practically an instant, his back facing his aunt. He took a deep breath before connecting to his wristband. A half-familiar yet half-familiar voice immediately transmitted over, "Hey handsome, wanna meet? What's up?" Luo Nan already saw that it was Zhang Yingying's number. He didn't have the strength to tangle with this overly lively woman with words, but the hoarseness of his voice shocked him the instant he opened his mouth. Afraid that his aunt would hear something strange, Luo Nan walked a few steps into the house. Zhang Yingying was quite sharp. She could hear that Luo Nan's state was a bit off. She asked curiously, "Are you sleeping? Where are you?" Luo Nan adjusted his voice and did his best to use short and clear words, "At home." "Okay. I think so too. But your heart is quite big. You haven't received a notice of the entrance exam all day. You don't even know to call and ask." How could Luo Nan say that he had completely forgotten about this matter? "I give it to you. Where did the initiative of the job seeker this morning go?" "I still remember even now, teacher, I want to be a staff member." The young girl pinched her throat, fabricating words that Luo Nan had never said before. Luo Nan actually laughed. Far too many things had happened today. From Luo Nan's perspective, each matter was heavier than the last. His thoughts had already been forced into a very narrow region. Zhang Yingying's jesting brought it up made his mind much clearer. The Professional Ability User Society. Okay, the Explorers Society was a platform that he had to fight for no matter what. Right now he didn't have the extra strength to go and think about things that had already happened. He didn't have any hope of becoming emotional and fretful. He asked, "It's starting?" Hurry back right now. Your main examiner is about to arrive at the large living area outside of Acumen College, the Limestone Water Village pub. I'll explain the specifics to you when you arrive. I feel that your chance has come. Limestone Water Village pub? Could this call have come 20 minutes earlier? Luo Nan was speechless for a time, but he didn't say much. After all, this phone call gave him an excellent reason. He hung up and his mood more or less calmed down. He turned around and wanted to speak to his aunt. But he never expected to meet Mrs. Luo Shuqing's curious gaze. "You're going out?" Yes. A date? No. Luo Nan immediately shrunk back. Then what is it? Luo Shuqing didn't let him off. It's a gathering. A gathering? Limestone Water Village pub? I remember that it's near your school. Why don't you just go there? Didn't I forget? Luo Nan was struggling to deal with this when he suddenly remembered something. It seemed that Xue Lei's girlfriend had mentioned this afternoon. He operated his wristband on the spot and sure enough, he received an invitation from the Acumen Mutual Assistance Association in his mailbox. Coincidentally, the Acumen Mutual Assistance Association's gathering location was also the Limestone Water Village pub. Of course, the meeting time had already passed, but it didn't affect him taking the blame. Luo Nan showed the email to his aunt. This is the school's Mutual Assistance Association activity. It's a very formal cold dinner party. Mutual Assistance Association. Why are you interested in it? Luo Shuqing understood her child's temperament the best. With his introverted and autistic personality, how could he be interested in this kind of social gathering? Luo Nan took out a ready-made reason. The school's societies are very exclusive. It would be very troublesome without a senior to lead the way. I still haven't joined a society yet. I'm afraid of getting my points deducted, so. You didn't pass the Mystic Arts Research Society test? Yeah. Did you take the initiative to go to the Mutual Assistance Association? No, they came to find me. Luo Shuqing finally believed him when she saw her nephew's introverted and immature expression. She shook her head. Acumen College is getting worse with each batch. If you knew this earlier, why did you set your mind on getting in? Luo Nan was silent. Luo Shuqing still wanted to say more, but she suddenly saw Luo Nan's thin figure standing in the room. Behind him was the familiar apartment furnishings. She was in a trance as if she had gone back in time 20 years ago. He was also a young man, and he was smiling at her. Her heart ached slightly. When she looked again, that high-spirited smile had already been replaced by her nephew's stiff and dull face. Silence and oppression accumulated in the doorway. Luo Nan thought that his reason had failed, but his face went slightly cold. It was his aunt's palm. She lightly patted him, then go tidy up a bit. The handsome boy of the Luo family can't be looked down upon. Chapter 60. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Show.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Luo Nan raised his head in astonishment and met his aunt's eyes. This strong woman, who was a department head in a multinational company, was frowning. Don't tell me you want to wear your school uniform to the gathering? No, I'm going to wash my face. How could Luo Nan not know that he had passed the test? He ran into the house in a hurry. During this time, he took the time to glance at the study. The large black leather box on the desk was very eye-catching, but there were no signs of it being moved, which made him heave a sigh of relief. Luo Nan quickly changed into casual clothes and came out. Luo Shuqing was actually a little dissatisfied with his appearance. He was clearly going to attend a gathering, but he still brought an old-fashioned notebook, as if he was going to take notes of a meeting. What was going on? In the end, she didn't point it out. She just said, "Let's go." Then she left first. Clearly, she was going to send Luo Nan to the gathering location. Luo Nan was already used to his aunt's forceful style. He was a well-behaved and obedient child. The 20-minute drive to the gathering place was destined to be full of struggles. Luo Nan's lackluster high school life had lasted less than a month. He had practically been asked about everything. The emphasis was placed on his relationships with his classmates. This caused Luo Nan, whose domain was practically blank, to be in quite a sorry state. They made it to the Limestone Water Village pub with great difficulty. Luo Shuqing was like the most dutiful of chauffeurs. She directly drove the flying car to the lobby and indicated that Luo Nan could get off. At the same time, her sharp eyes swept the lobby of the hotel. Luo Nan knew what his aunt was thinking, but he didn't have a single method to deal with it. He could only pray a few times in his heart, open the door, get off the car, and enter the lobby. Perhaps his luck had taken a turn for the better, but Luo Nan really did discover the sign-in area of the interactive meeting in a corner of the hall according to the hint of the invitation email. Even though there was no one on duty there, the electronic sign-in screen was still there. Luo Nan was able to find his name without a hitch. When he finished signing, his aunt's call came. "Don't stay out too late. Call me when the party is over." Luo Nan let out a sigh of relief when Luo Shuqing's flying car drove away outside the hotel. He glanced at the number of people who had signed in. There were actually more than 1,000 people. In Acumen College, due to the existence of the upper limit of society members, no society would have this kind of scale. Only an inter-society sorority could pull out such a grand display. Since there were so many people, one more or one less wouldn't make a difference. He didn't have to run over halfway and attract unwanted attention. However, Zhang Yingying was really unreliable. From the tone of the phone, it sounded like she had been waiting in the hotel for a long time. But where was she now? Luo Nan was about to contact her again, but before he could even dial out the number, he heard laughter coming from behind him. "Nanster, I thought you weren't coming." As he spoke, the sturdy Shuelei strode over. Beside him was his girlfriend, Chen Xiaolin. Both of them were tall and had long legs. In just a few steps, they had already reached the front. Luo Nan hastily ended the call. He felt awkward and baffled. Weren't these two people too well informed? He had only signed his name. If it was only Shui Lei, it would be easy to handle. But facing Chen Xiaolin, Luo Nan still needed to be courteous. Apologies, Senior Sister Chen. I was busy so I came late. Chen Xiaolin pursed her lips into a smile. Leicester and I didn't think you would come. I was shocked to see the message on the sign-in screen. This. Luo Nan didn't know how to respond for a time. Chen Xiaolin seemed to have drunk a bit of alcohol. Her cheeks were slightly red and she spoke quite straightforwardly. But it's good that Junior could come. You're giving me face. After all, your sign-in counts as my performance. Having spoken to this point, Luo Nan naturally couldn't say that he didn't want to come. He actually wanted to leave. He could only follow the two of them to the banquet hall. It was just as Chen Xiaolin said. The cold dinner this time was very formal. There was a big shot from the student council who pulled in sponsors. They reserved the number 1 banquet hall of the hotel. The scene was extremely grand. Number 1 banquet hall was on the 27th floor. There were no unused elevators in the hall, so the three of them chatted as they waited. Chen Xiaolin talked about the matter of the society in a few words. This was also the reason why she invited Luo Nan to participate in the banquet. I've already found people related to the matter of the society. I'll bring you and Leicester to meet them later. Do your best to pick one that is more to your liking. Leicester, don't say that the society is boring. There are no credits. Luo Nan had no choice but to open his mouth. Senior sister, the matter regarding the society, actually, Chen Xiaolin frowned. You did it ahead of time? Luo Nan nodded in agreement. Li Mingda did it? Chen Xiaolin's face flushed red again. This time it wasn't just because she was drunk, but because she was angry. Junior, I've already mentioned it to you. The matter of the society is too complicated. It's not what you think it is. Do you know where Li Mingda is right now? He's in this hotel. He's being entertained in a private room. Even if you have to go through him, do you think it's more effective in his office or here? She's drunk. Shui Lei first reminded Luo Nan in a low voice. Then he turned to face Chen Xiaolin and guaranteed, Nanster definitely didn't go through the procedures with Elder Illustrious Virtue. I can testify to this. Elder Illustrious Virtue was quite angry at the time. Luo Nan could see Chen Xiaolin's state. He wasn't angry, but he found it strange that Shui Lei didn't explain the matter clearly to Chen Xiaolin. I asked Shui Lei in a whisper, and he shrugged. Isn't there that Senior Xie? He has a lot of connections there, and I'm not good with words. Luo Nan immediately understood that this sturdy young man of the same age with rough lines actually had quite a plan in mind. He was absolutely not a boorish fellow who couldn't even keep his mouth shut. What are you guys talking about? Chen Xiaolin frowned and stared at them. At this time, she was tipsy and looked charmingly naive. Luo Nan and Shui Lei raised their heads together. They were just about to explain when the elevator door opened and a dozen or so people walked out. It looked like the atmosphere was pretty good. Their laughter was loud and clear. Shui Lei wasn't interested in these things. He blocked the elevator door and let Chen Xiaolin and Luo Nan get in. Unexpectedly, Chen Xiaolin pulled him back. Wait. Huh? You see that person? He just came out of the elevator. The youngest one. I just told you about him. He's the vice president of the student council, Chen Weikan. He's the president of the Mutual Assistance Society. He's my immediate superior. Luo Nan and Shui Lei both looked over. The group of people had already walked out of the hall and were chatting outside. They couldn't see too clearly due to the contrast in the lighting. But from what they remembered, there weren't many young people inside. Chen Xiaolin took a few deep breaths in an attempt to lower her tipsy state a bit. Then she reminded them, Senior Chen is an authoritative figure in the student council. His family seems to have military connections. He's quite a nice person normally because we're from the same family. Our relationship is quite good. I didn't ask him for help with this matter, but he mentioned it. It will certainly be a lot easier to handle. She was going to strike up a conversation. Shui Lei and Luo Nan's gazes locked. They could both see the lack of interest in each other. However, Shui Lei soon grinned and was secretly kicked by Chen Xiaolan's pointed high heel. Chapter 61. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Show.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Look at the people that he went out with. Just the ones that I know include the heads of the parent-teacher conference, the board of directors, and the society office. These are all people that he invited to raise the standards of the cold dinner party. Even Mingde Lao Xian is not qualified to be among them. Love go small, say Netku. If you talk to him, just a few words will save you a lot of trouble. Chen Xiaolan was exasperated that Shui Lei didn't live up to her expectations. Shui Lei also frowned. He really couldn't do such a thing. Without waiting for a winner to be decided between the two, Chen Weikan and the others returned to the hall after sending off the guests who raised the standards. Seeing that they were approaching, Chen Xiaolan secretly pushed Shui Lei, reminding him to open the elevator door. Then, she walked up to them and smiled sweetly. President Chen, on the other side, Chen Xiaolan greeted the higher-ups of the Mutual Assistance Association one by one. Shui Lei hesitated for a moment, but his feet didn't move. This caused him to fall behind a beat. In front of him, Chen Xiaolan turned around, and her face stiffened. Luo Nan saw that the situation was far from good, so he gave Shui Lei a push. He himself stood at the entrance of the elevator, setting up a temporary waiting mode. By the time he raised his head, Shui Lei had finally greeted the other side, but there was no more. It was mainly Chen Xiaolan who was holding the fort. The group moved towards the elevator. Chen Weikan, who was in the lead, looked really outstanding. He was tall and not particularly handsome, but his smile was gentle and a little distant. He also greeted Chen Xiaolan and Shui Lei without lacking in etiquette, but his footsteps did not stop as he headed straight for the elevator. Clearly, he was the kind of person who would make others match his pace. He was a rather domineering character. In comparison, Luo Nan felt that he, who was standing at the entrance of the elevator, was quite like a doorman. Just as they reached the middle of the lobby, another group of people entered the hotel. The one in the lead was a woman in professional attire. She was carrying a rather retro folder and walking in a hurry. At first glance, she looked like a white-collar worker. Behind her were 4 rather capable and strong men, who were also in a hurry. This group of people was much faster than Chen Weizan's group. Especially the white-collared woman in front of him. Her figure was definitely more than 1.7 meters, and she wore a pair of high-heeled shoes that were more than 5 centimeters high. Although there was nothing special about her traditional suit and trousers, it matched her tall and slender figure. Especially her long legs, under the slim trousers, the lines were beautiful, it was simply soul-stirring. Chen Xiaolan was already a tall and thin beauty, but she was still half a head shorter than the white-collared woman. This was most obvious when the two of them passed each other. Although the white-collared woman had an amazing model body, her steps were not cat-like. The distance between her steps was large, and she moved forward in a straight line. Even the 4 strong men behind her had a hard time following. When he got closer, he could see that the appearance of this white-collared lady matched her figure perfectly. Her silhouette was clear and solid, like a sculpture, but there was a coldness that kept people away. In comparison, beauty was secondary. At this moment, she was frowning as if she was thinking about something. She walked into the elevator and ignored everyone else. A few strong men followed behind him, and in the blink of an eye, they filled up half of the elevator. Well, Luo Nan had really become a doorman now. Chen Weikan was a bit stupefied when the white-collared woman walked by like the wind. Only when he saw the face of the white-collared woman through the lights of the elevator did he wake up from a dream. He called out in a probing manner, "Sis. Sister Fang?" The white-collared woman slightly raised her head. Her gaze swept over Chen Weizan's face, and her frown deepened. Clearly, she did not recognize who he was. Chen Weikan was certain of his own guess. He hurried 2 steps forward and laughed. Hello, Sister Fong. I'm Chen Weikan. My father is the Deputy Chief of Staff of the Xia City Closed Defense Army, Chen Hanxing. He strode into the elevator, and his subordinates behind him, Chen Xiaolin, Shui Lei, and the others naturally followed him in. It was a grandiose and imposing scene. The white-collared woman's gaze swept across everyone's faces at this time. It was impossible to tell whether she was happy or angry, but Chen Weikan thought of a certain rumor. His heart suddenly jumped, and he turned his hand to block the elevator door, blocking everyone behind him. His forearm touched something at this time, but he was disinclined to pay attention to it. He turned his body to the side and didn't explain. He just said in a low voice, "You guys go next." He pressed the button to close the elevator door as he spoke, blocking the others outside. F***ck me. Luo Nan could clearly hear Shui Lei's cursing. Then he saw Shui Lei come over with a dark expression. He wanted to press the elevator button, but there were 2 people in between. It took a bit of time, and by the time he arrived, the elevator had already gone up. He was a step too late no matter what. He looked at Chen Xiaolin again, and she was covering her chest with her hand. Chen Weikan had just extended his hand to block people, but he had bumped into her chest. This was a very disrespectful behavior. Of course, the elevator clearly could fit, but it was forcefully cut in 2. This kind of behavior was even more arrogant. Shui Lei was a simple and honest person, but this didn't mean that he didn't have a temper. He didn't grab Chen Weikan, and his eyes glared at the higher-ups of the Mutual Assistance Society. His expression was quite unfriendly. If his tongue was handy, he would have started cursing right now. Those who were able to mix their way to the higher-ups of the Mutual Assistance Society, this sort of cross-society friendship society, were all shrewd people. They had a deeper understanding of Chen Weikan. Even though they felt uncomfortable in their hearts, they still had to protect the president's face, and at the same time, their own face. Someone immediately laughed. Maybe it's some big sponsor. Speaking of which, President Chen is really working hard. Is he going to use a pretty boy trick? Chen Xiaolin came back to her senses from the side. She pulled Shui Lei and whispered, "He didn't do it on purpose. Just look at that woman. You can tell that she's not easy to mess with." Perhaps these words were all reasons, but from Shui Lei's perspective, they were too fucking roundabout. There wasn't a bit of sincerity in the roundabout. They were all bullshit. He looked around at the group of people at the elevator entrance, including Chen Xiaolin. His breathing grew heavier, and it was clear that the rage in his heart was rising. Luo Nan was just about to step forward when he saw the situation, but then he felt his arms sink. Then a laughing voice entered his ear, "What a rude fellow. You actually didn't wait at the door. Luckily my eyes are sharp. I nearly missed you." Zhang Yingying had arrived. Luo Nan turned his head and saw that this young female lawyer had already changed into a completely different attire than when she was on the warship. A denim jacket paired with a short skirt revealed her snow-white long legs. She wore leggings and open-toed Roman shoes. It was almost summer attire, and she radiated with vitality. Zhang Yingying's sudden insertion actually eased the tense atmosphere a bit. Chen Xiaolin could feel her boyfriend's rage as well as his clearly damaged self-esteem. But she didn't know how to console him for a time. She could dispel Shui Lei's rage without provoking the group of people in the Mutual Assistance Society. She could only try to divert his attention. She first pulled on Shui Lei's stiff arm. Her posture was exactly the same as Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying's. She forced a smile and greeted him, "Nanster, is this your girlfriend?" Luo Nan was just about to shake his head when Zhang Yingying giggled to the side as she responded, "Hello everyone. I'm one of Luo Nan's pursuers. Just call me Yingying." Chapter 62. Genius in 1 second. Remember Love Go? SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Chen Xiaolin was confused by Zhang Yingying's completely unconventional words. Her current state of being laden with worries really wasn't suitable to deal with Zhang Yingying, who was quick-witted and ever-changing. Fortunately, the elevator on the other side arrived at this time. The higher-ups of the Mutual Assistance Association went over first. Chen Xiaolin tugged at Shui Lei, but she couldn't move him at all. The two were a bit stupefied. Luo Nan held Zhang Yingying's hand and lightly bumped into Shui Lei when they passed each other. Only then did the stiff atmosphere break. The group of people entered the elevator, but the atmosphere inside the elevator could be imagined. The only one who wasn't affected was Zhang Yingying. She pulled Luo Nan to the innermost part of the spacious elevator and intimately leaned against him. Her tall stature blocked everyone's line of sight. Come, come, come. Lower your head. How could Luo Nan allow himself to be pinched by her? Zhang Yingying's hand moved quickly right when he was frowning. She reached out and pinched his earlobe, stuffing something into his ear. Soon, fine noises rang out. What's this? A built-in earphone? Examiner. The exam question. Okay. Actually, this toy is called the Hexa-ear. The name isn't important, and the function isn't important. The important thing is that it's your entrance exam question. It can be very easy, or it can be very difficult. Zhang Yingying lowered her hand and raised it again. This made Luo Nan understand that the answer to this question would determine his position in the professional society. Oh, you guys are going to the 27th floor. There's a gathering? You're not paying attention, kid. Then the exam will end at the moment we arrive at the station. Do your best. What the hell are you doing for no reason? Luo Nan found it hard to remain calm. He looked at the floor display and saw that they had already reached the 15th floor. Moreover, it was freaking smooth. They didn't stop at all midway. They would arrive at the station in at most 10 seconds. How could Luo Nan have the time to think deeply? A trembling sound rang out on the mental plane. The heavily chained crow that was most worthy of his trust passed through his skull and swept past the foreign object in his ear. Without a doubt, the heavily chained crow was Luo Nan's highest achievement in his format. It was also the embodiment of his ultimate strength. As for the wraith sign that was transformed from a Darksider life form like the burning wraith, ability users should be more sensitive to it. Luo Nan instinctively avoided contact between the two. He didn't use the foremost position of the chain. At the same time, the external neuron maintained a state of readiness, ready to be connected at any time. After all, the first impression that this Hexa-ear gave him was that of a built-in earphone, like a special electronic product. If the results of the exam weren't ideal, he would have to take it even if he had to cheat. Luo Nan had to fight for his position in the professional society no matter what. This was because it represented his future. The flowing thoughts and judgments actually only took an instant. The heavily chained crow cut through the Hexa-ear and used its resolution, limited senses to roughly analyze the internal structure of this little thing. Sure enough, this was a precision electronic product. The highly integrated components made Luo Nan, this electronic noob, completely stupefied. However, there was a strange reaction that came back the moment the chain cut through. Luo Nan's mind naturally concentrated over. The fine noises by his ears were all blocked out. Only the reaction formed a series of electrical signals that stimulated the relevant regions of the nervous system. It transmitted a set of effective information in a form that could be understood by people. Oh, this form is quite familiar. Before Luo Nan could react, a gentle artificial voice rang by his ear, number 5357. Welcome to the Xia City Wilderness Explorers Branch. At the same time, a translucent area opened up on Luo Nan's retina. A concise visual interface appeared. It was a traditional forum interface. It displayed that the registration had already been approved. He needed to fill in the relevant information. Luo Nan was no stranger to this sort of virtual interface. Many companies, light film, products all had this sort of function. 2 hours ago, he had used the external neuron to have a similar experience. This was also done through telepathy. There was an instant when Luo Nan nearly believed that the external neuron was disobedient again. But soon he confirmed that the external neuron still maintained its original state. The Hexier was just using an extremely similar method to convert the electrical signals into the brain. Yes, it was extremely similar. Luo Nan reached out his hand to press against the icy cold metal wall. The rate of his heartbeat rapidly increased. This was, without a doubt, a brand new clue. A clue related to the external neuron. A clue related to that coward. He should have thought of this earlier. With his grandfather's research on the coward, he should have intersected with ability users to a certain extent. Oh my God. His decision to join the professional society was correct. Ding. An electronic notification sound rang out. The elevator had reached the 27th floor. Everyone else walked out, but Zhang Yingying stared at him with a face full of suspicion. Don't tell me you don't feel anything at all. If you're this disappointing, I'll just kick you down the stairs. Luo Nan was unwilling to let Zhang Yingying see his chaotic mood. He concealed it by lowering his head and walked straight out. Zhang Yingying followed him out of the elevator and said in shock, "It can't be. This doesn't make sense. My judgment shouldn't be wrong, this woman's buzzing was annoying." Luo Nan's already fuzzy train of thought was completely messed up. There were already, "welcome to the society," and so on. Of course he wouldn't believe that he had failed the evaluation. He gave a cursory glance at the information-filling interface. The vast majority of the fields had drop-down options, probably to take into consideration the fuzzy nature of telepathy input. All he had to do was choose from among them. But aside from the basic age and gender, he had never seen most of the other fields. For example, the ability source flow column. There were 2 drop-down options. One was the talent flow, and the other was the system flow. What the hell? Luo Nan spoke in a bad mood. Am I the talent flow or the system flow? Of course it's the talent flow. Huh. Luo Nan's mind stirred and he confirmed the options. But he still felt that he didn't understand. What's the difference between the talent flow and the system flow? The talent flow is when one is born with a certain special ability. The system flow is when one relies on an existing cultivation system to undergo arduous tempering. Zhang Yingying's voice was a bit floaty, but Luo Nan had already decisively overturned her judgment before she could finish speaking. I'm the system flow. What a joke. If he chose the talent flow, then wouldn't his grandfather's decades of research and his 5 years of hard work be completely negated? His mind stirred again and he had already changed the options on the data. But before he could ask his next question, his neck suddenly tightened. Zhang Yingying had actually tightly strangled him from behind. At the same time, the young woman's energetic body pressed tightly against him, causing him to sway violently. You saw the interface, right? You're filling out the form, right? You still haven't awakened, right? A precision-oriented mental strengthening. This is going to defy the natural order. Luo Nan nearly fainted from Zhang Yingying's stranglehold. His brain was already a mush. Chapter 63. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Zhang Yingying disregarded the situation and caused a ruckus. Of course, it was very eye-catching. Shui Lei and the others, who were about to enter the banquet venue, turned their heads one after another. They couldn't hear what Zhang Yingying was saying, but they were all dumbfounded when they saw this scene. Luo Nan was strangled by Zhang Yingying, unable to make any movements. Zhang Yingying smiled and waved her hand to the front, strangling Luo Nan to a corner. Shui Lei and the others could only assume that the young couple had some private things to say. They glanced at each other, shook their heads, and entered the venue. After this interruption, the stiff atmosphere between Chen Xiaolin and Shui Lei continued to ease. The two found an opening and went to the other side to talk. Let go. Luo Nan was strangled by the neck and forcibly kidnapped by a woman, and he didn't even have the strength to fight back. Luo Nan's self-esteem suffered a serious injury. He was truly a bit annoyed. It was true that Zhang Yingying was a familiar person, but from his perspective, he and Zhang Yingying clearly weren't that familiar. Perhaps it was because she felt his mood, or perhaps it was because her own excitement had passed, but Zhang Yingying took the initiative to loosen her arm. She recovered her cheerful appearance and pressed down on Luo Nan's chest before he flipped out. I'm worried that you haven't figured out the situation yet. Are you sure you came to participate in this cold dinner party? Luo Nan was speechless for a time, but the anger in his heart only increased. He took a deep breath. Then why did you follow me to the 27th floor? Because I had to make a choice. Zhang Yingying had a self-confident appearance. If you had no reaction at all to the Hexier, then I would have kicked you down the stairs to avoid losing face. Luo Nan sneered. Now that I have a reaction, you're going to strangle me? Hee, it was just an accident caused by a moment of excitement. Men can't be small, that. I'm happy for you. After all, it's really rare for an ability user candidate like you, who hasn't awakened yet, to be able to enter the psychic wave network the moment you touch the Hexier. Psychic wave network? It was unavoidable for Luo Nan's attention to be diverted. Frankly speaking, Zhang Yingying's previous appearance of shouting and wrangling gave him a bit of an idea. Zhang Yingying asked him back, what do you think the Hexier is? A special electronic device. Bingo. Hexier is a psychic tool made by President Ouyang of the branch. Don't complain, Mr. President has always been weak at naming things. Zhang Yingying giggled as she sold out another person. I won't explain the concept to you. I'll let the president talk to you personally later. You only need to understand that the Hexier is a special communication tool. It has a total of 6 communication levels. The simplest one is the radio, which is a one-way transmission of psychic waves. As long as you are an ability user or have the talent of an ability user and can receive this special psychic wave, you will be considered qualified. Luo Nan thought of that gentle artificial voice, the one that says welcome to the club. Aha. By the way, you should have a serial number, right? What is it again? 5357. Okay, wait for me to add you as a friend. Zhang Yingying suddenly paused. She blinked and changed her mind. Why don't you add me to familiarize yourself with the operation? My number is 6166. Let me tell you by the way. The next 2 communication levels are the television and the computer. The television is a one-way transmission of signals. It tests the ability user's mental senses and materialization abilities. We call it synesthesia. You are a precision type of mental enhancement. You have an advantage in this aspect. And when you reach the computer level, you can realize human-computer interaction. Then you can use the special frequency set up by the society to achieve mutual communication between network users. In order to reach this level, you need to have a bit of mental interference with reality. This is normally the privilege of the awakened. But since you are a psychic, perhaps you have a talent bonus. I'm not a talent type. Luo Nan emphasized once more. He cared a great deal about this. He was certain that if he didn't have a breakthrough in the format and didn't form the heavily chained crow, then he absolutely wouldn't be a psychic. Perhaps he wasn't a psychic at all. Zhang Yingying spread her hands. Okay, up to you. But if you don't add me as a friend, then I'm going to doubt whether or not you really have the ability. Luo Nan's face was cold as he tried to add her as a friend according to Zhang Yingying's words. But there was still a problem before his eyes. Information. Who's going to fill out stuff like information? What if some guy who doesn't like you sees it? Wouldn't that be sending your neck to the blade of someone else? Zhang Yingying's face was full of disdain as she encouraged Luo Nan, just skip it. Come, use telepathy to control it. Try adding me as a friend. Relax, the Hexier's fuzzy calculation ability is quite strong. As long as you have the ability, just think about it. Wow. Luo Nan saw the translucent interface before his eyes change amidst Zhang Yingying's gasp of surprise. It displayed, you have already become a friend with 6166. Then a furry squirrel jumped out and bowed towards him. On the other side, Zhang Yingying burst into laughter. Oh my god. You're using your school photo. So stupid. Even if you use a squirrel to act cute, there's still the word stupid in front of it. Luo Nan retorted sarcastically. But he also discovered that this was no different from the communication software on the market. He experimentally changed the effect of his display and soon a relevant modification interface popped up. Luo Nan thought for a bit and sent his visualization diagram up. The tetrahedron and its inscribed sphere spun in the dark void. It gave off a rather mysterious and serene feeling. Luo Nan had never considered this diagram to be some sort of secret that couldn't be announced. On the contrary, he wanted to publicize this diagram to as many people as possible, as well as the various theories related to it belonging to his grandfather. It was just that Luo Nan's understanding of the marvels within was far too lacking. He simply didn't have the qualifications to preach it. But as long as he had the chance, he would be happy to let more people have a deeper understanding of the diagram. As Luo Nan's good friend, Zhang Yingying naturally saw this change in the first instance. She mumbled, "Old pedant," but didn't say anything. Luo Nan was still pondering over the deeper usage of the hexayear. After all, Zhang Yingying had said that it had a total of 6 application levels. She had only talked about 3 before. What were the last 3? But a notification sound rang out before he could ask in detail. A friend request popped up on his Retina interface. He had just entered the network. Where did this friend request come from? He swept a glance at the number and saw that it was displayed as 5156. Of course, he couldn't see anything from this. He could only ask Zhang Yingying, who's 5156. 5156. Zhang Yingying blinked her eyes. It seemed that she confirmed it with her own hexayear. Finally, she made an expression of sudden realization. It's the secretary assigned to you. The society has always treated its members very well. Hee. It would be strange if I believed you. Luo Nan cast a glance at Zhang Yingying. In the end, he still added 5156 as a friend. Soon, a new request was sent over, but it was the wartime encrypted communication that made him speechless. He couldn't help but glance at Zhang Yingying. He suspected that this woman was setting up an ambush, but in the end, he still accepted the call. He had just accepted the request when a cold and clear female voice entered his ear. It was not the slightest bit sloppy. "Mr. Luo, I'm the temporary secretary arranged by the society, Fang Yueyin. Which floor are you on? I'll come pick you up." You? Luo Nan hadn't come back to his senses yet when this secretary Fang spoke. "Please share your geographical location at the same time. This will facilitate wartime communications." Over. Had he returned to the era of the Third World War? As far as the eye could see, the rust-colored soil and the wave-like cracks continued to extend endlessly into the depths. You should have already seen the main interface. It's the wilderness, right? There's a notice board by the side of the road. It's there. What kind of third-rate game interface is this? Luo Nan cursed silently as he read the information. In less than half a second, words like Darksider species, human-faced arachnid, virus, and so on swarmed in. They interweaved to form a blurry and gloomy screen of darkness before his eyes. Fine cold sweat seeped out from Luo Nan's spine with a whoosh. See, do I still need to say more? Right now, it was a war against the Darksider race and its infected. The government, the military, the society, and Quantum Corporation are sparing no expense to launch a search and annihilation operation in the entire city. This epidemic must be completely contained before it spreads on a large scale. Zhang Yingying's finger tapped on Luo Nan's chest, one tap after another. Her face was devoid of a rare smile. "My attitude is very serious. The society's attitude is also very serious. Every ability user, no matter if they're veterans or rookies, must contribute their strength when it comes to matters related to our safety. Moreover, Mr. Luo, who has just joined the society, you are a psychic. For the current society, you are what we need the most precious resource." Luo Nan muttered, "The most precious resource?" Of course. Do you know how many psychics the society has right now? Even a branch like Xia City, which has over 1,000 people, only has 4. One of them is currently exploring the wilderness and won't be able to rush back in a short amount of time. As for the remaining 3, Old Master Yu is nearly 100 years old. It would be inhumane to have him run around day and night. He can only sit in the central command. Then East City and West City are divided. Old Gao and Old Bai are working hard right now. And then you discovered a new coolie? Luo Nan sneered in order to conceal the nervousness in his heart. In a certain sense, he could be considered a virus-infected person. It was just that the Darksider seed that had invaded his body had been subdued by the dark chains formed by the format's power. But the problem was that this kind of subduing didn't eliminate the roots. The burning wraith had transformed into the wraith sign, but it still retained its instincts. It was still able to devour its own kind to strengthen itself. Only the heavens knew whether or not his current state could be considered an infected person in the eyes of a group of ability users. Whether or not he was still a target to be strangled. But Luo Nan also had a sort of indescribable excitement amidst his nervousness. The human-faced arachnid. This sort of peculiar existence expanded the depth and breadth of his understanding of the burning wraith in an instant. It allowed him to overlook the ins and outs of this matter from a higher level. It allowed him to overlook the cause and effect of this matter. Moreover, he had a completely new concept of what he could do in the future. This was a large net laid down by the human-faced arachnid. He was originally a node in this net, but now it had already mutated. From the society's judgment, any other node that carried out the net operation would probably restore the human-faced arachnid to its peak. The human-faced arachnid's treacherous and bewitching nature would be displayed to the fullest. But looking at how his format was suppressing the wraith sign, wouldn't he be able to completely grasp the terrifying power of the human-faced arachnid in the end if he were to start from this point? Wasn't this the extraordinary power he had always been pursuing? It was also a power grasped by the power of his format. Perhaps this was where the mysteries of his grandfather's research lay? Hey. What are you thinking about? You're not scared stupid, are you? Luo Nan came back to his senses in a daze. He didn't immediately respond. Zhang Yingying patted his shoulder. Don't be scared. It's normal to be scared. But it's already very gratifying that you didn't cry for your mother. Relax. We just want to borrow your marvelous draw ability. And we'll absolutely protect you. Look, you have me now. Then the society arranged a full-time secretary for you. It's Yuan, right? She's a monster who entered the society with a C+ score. A genius. Her true strength can only be higher and not lower. Luo Nan concealed a smile. Don't they say that only psychics are useful when facing the Darksider species? What are you thinking about? Any qualified awakened has a method to lock onto the Darksider species in a true battle. It's just that each method is different. Many people can even see it with their naked eyes. Zhang Yingying solemnly corrected Luo Nan's preposterous and laughable train of thought. The true problem is that when the Darksider species is in a hidden state, only psychics can discover the clues. The society is relying on your ability in this aspect. Who would send you to the front lines? Oh really? Luo Nan became even more nervous. It seemed that his situation was more similar to that of an awakened. It was also a intuition. At most, he could rely on the wraith sign to sense it at close range. As for psychics, when he fooled Zhang Yingying, all he did was draw what he saw. In addition, Li Xueqing had a bit of a psychic's intent. But the premise was that the burning wraith on Li Xueqing's body had already taken form. They could sense each other. This kind of situation was seriously different from the long-range senses of a psychic. What to do? Luo Nan wanted to pick up his notebook right now. He wanted to make some gestures to avoid making a fool of himself on stage. In fact, he really did take out his notebook. He opened the flexible e-ink screen and drawing software. Chapter 65. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Zhang Yingying burst out laughing when she saw this. Sharpening a spear at the last minute? Even if it's not fast, it's still good. Do you really think this is an exam? Luo Nan didn't even raise his head. Someone said that I'm a psychic, but I've never admitted it. Now that it seems like it's not bad, I'll draw a picture to get a feel for it. If it really is. You mentioned what if to me. Zhang Yingying saw that Luo Nan wasn't sharpening his spear at the last minute. Instead, he was running away at the last minute. Her almond eyes immediately widened and she grabbed him by the collar. You're able to draw my white rainbow and that bizarre prison building sketch. How could you not be a psychic? Sure, I'm a shaman. Luo Nan continued to place his gaze on the drawing software. He wanted to draw something, but his mind was in chaos. He had no idea what to draw at all. At this time, Zhang Yingying was still talking noisily in his ear, so he decided to just throw in the towel. You were the one who introduced the concept of shamans to me. I'll also take the association's offer. Anyways, in the end, it'll be you, Sister Yingying, paying the bill, right? Oh. Luo Nan had never used such an intimate form of address before. It made Zhang Yingying fall back in disgust. Kids with reverse psychology were not easy to deal with. Zhang Yingying's eyeballs swiveled. Her hand that was gripping Luo Nan's collar loosened a bit. It's just hiring a C++ secretary and bodyguard. I can afford it for one night at most. On the other hand, if you want to enjoy this kind of treatment for a long time, then you'll have to put in a bit of effort. Oh right, you seem to have said that you needed inspiration or something. Do you want to find a bit of excitement? Acumen College's large living area has a very high level of service. In this mutually shameless competition, Luo Nan was defeated by Zhang Yingying's abundant experience in the end. He pursed his lips and said nothing. Distractedly, he drew meaningless lines on his graphics software. At the end of the day, he still cared a lot about the professional association's courtesy. This was a high starting point that he had never imagined before, and it was also a great opportunity that fell from the sky. He didn't want to let this opportunity slip through his fingers, so he had to do something. Luo Nan tried to recall this morning's practice that was most similar to a psychic's methods. But that dreamlike feeling was really too mysterious, and with his current restless state, it was really difficult for him to completely recreate it. Zhang Yingying tilted her head and looked at the messy lines on the flexible screen. The more she looked, the more suspicious she became. Hey, if you want to make fun of yourself, don't drag me into it. Luo Nan was disinclined to pay attention to her. Reality and illusion interweaved. The strange scene of a human body and a wraith merging together made one's scalp go numb. And directly behind him, careful. Zhang Yingying's screech and the sharp whistling sound of tearing air rang out at the same time. The elevator door was already closing at this time. Luo Nan could clearly see a warped figure sticking to his body on the smooth metal door. The figure's shoulder exploded with blood. The blood sprayed out and landed on the side of Luo Nan's neck. And at the same time, Luo Nan's back violently shook. It was as if someone was pushing against him, causing him to fall forward. But the force was too great. In the end, Luo Nan's feet didn't touch the ground at all. He soared into the air and collided with the elevator door that had yet to close. The elevator door approached at high speed, and the gap between the doors slowly shrank. Luo Nan could roughly understand that he was probably being used as a tool to block the door. Then the elevator door opened to the two sides at this time. A figure staggered and fell to the side, smashing into a corner of the elevator. It was Chen Xiaolin. As for Shuelei, this big fellow who was being cut by half of the wraith was blocking the door. His simple and honest face even carried a bit of childishness. He was like an angry Vajra, and his thick palm chopped down at Luo Nan's face. Perhaps it was because of the haste, but Luo Nan didn't even have the time to stir up his negative emotions. Right now Luo Nan was actually quite calm. In the blink of an eye, Shuelei's palm cut past Luo Nan's ear. He grabbed Luo Nan's shoulder and pushed down lightly. Luo Nan instantly broke free from his suspended state. He involuntarily tumbled and fell into the corner of the elevator, in the same direction as Chen Xiaolin. Luo Nan's field of view spun as he tumbled, but the heavily chained crow drove the wraith sign. The entire surrounding environment of the elevator was mapped into his brain. At the same time, an angry roar rang out beside his ear. Xue Lei had already collided with the shadow that had pounced into the elevator. It looked like Xue Lei wanted to knock the person out of the elevator. But the opponent's momentum was far too strong. Xue Lei's majestic body was actually completely unable to resist. His entire body fell backwards, smashing heavily into the back of the elevator. From Luo Nan's senses, it seemed as if the entire building was swaying. Chapter 66. Genius in 1 second. Remember love go away. SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. The swing of the elevator was quite intense. Perhaps the violent vibrations had caused some kind of circuit failure, but the elevator doors didn't even close. The entire elevator suddenly sank down, sinking no less than half a floor. Zhang Yingying, who had rushed up from behind, was nearly crushed to death in the intertwining cracks of the elevator. Fortunately, she was able to make an emergency stop, narrowly avoiding disaster. But she looked at the sealed entrance and stamped her feet in anxiety. The elevator soon came to a stop. This sort of maglev elevator floated within the magnetic passageway. The moment the elevator's swing exceeded the safety line, it would automatically activate its mechanical lock and fix its position. This also meant that the elevator would become a sealed space for a short period of time. Luo Nan and Chen Xiaolin didn't have the ability to fight. Their fates would be decided by Xue Lei and his enemy, who were currently entangled together. Xue Lei's face flushed red. The man wearing a black suit in front of him was a size smaller than him, but the strength the man displayed was far above his own. Xue Lei's internal organs felt as if they had been flipped upside down after receiving a frontal attack. Even breathing was difficult for a few seconds. What was even more bizarre was that the other party clearly had a serious wound on his shoulder that tore through his flesh and bone. His face didn't have any distinctive features, but it was so apathetic that it made one's heart go cold. His exertion of strength wasn't affected at all. Right now, the two's arms were pressed against each other, and their legs were apart. Their entire bodies were entangled together. Xue Lei was just about to use a wrestling method to seize back some of the initiative, but he saw his enemy open his mouth, revealing dense white teeth, and directly bite at Xue Lei's throat. Xue Lei grunted and relied on his height to smash down with his head. His forehead collided with the enemy's face, blocking this vicious beast-like bite. It was reasonable to say that Xue Lei's choice was brave and correct. The position of his collision was also advantageous. But the other party was clearly bleeding from his nose and mouth, yet it was as if nothing had happened. Xue Lei's head was dizzy, and in the end, it affected his body's exertion of strength. His feet floated slightly, and just as he was about to cry out in his heart, his whole body was lifted off the ground by the brute force of the other party. Then, the world spun around him, and he fell heavily on the metal floor with a hollow sound. This time, he almost threw up his heart and lungs. However, years of arduous training came into play. The instant Xue Lei lost his balance, he almost instinctively twisted his legs, and in the end, he still managed to trip the enemy. Taking advantage of this gap, Xue Lei's majestic body contracted at an unbelievable degree, and then bounced up again. Just as the enemy was about to pounce on him, Xue Lei took advantage of the momentum to deliver another headbutt. This time, it was from the bottom up, hitting the enemy's chest. After 2 consecutive tremors, Xue Lei and the enemy were pushed back at the same time, hitting the metal inner wall behind them. What was worth rejoicing about was that Xue Lei's grasp of direction was quite good. He pushed the enemies in the opposite direction from Luo Nan and Chen Xiaolin. He leaned slightly to the side and was able to protect the two who had no combat strength. He should be able to take a breather now, right? Xue Lei's chest heaved up and down violently. He didn't know why, but he was in a terrible state today. His stamina consumption was especially severe. The previous round of dangerous hand-to-hand combat had almost completely emptied his stamina. Was it because he was too nervous? Shui Lei couldn't figure out his own situation, and the enemy in front of him didn't immediately make a move. Instead, he used a strange and unfocused gaze to look over here. He was simply like a mental patient. Are you guys crazy? Chen Xiaolin, who was in the corner, was finally able to somewhat react after a series of unforeseen events. Everything that happened before her eyes had already completely exceeded the limits of her common sense. She knew that her boyfriend could fight very well, but she had never seen him fight to the death without saying a word. There was absolutely no reason at all. Luo Nan, whom she had just gotten to know today, had joined in as well. It looked like he was standing on their side. Or perhaps it was because of this fellow that the inexplicable murderer was drawn in. What she couldn't bear the most was the, as it should be, expressions on their faces. What the hell was going on? Chen Xiaolin struggled to stand up. She felt a sense of absurdity and dread that separated herself from the rational dimension. It made her instinctively want to flee this area, to flee from these people. But how could she do this in the completely sealed elevator? She could only shout at the top of her lungs, "Can't you guys stop and talk nicely? We're all trapped right now. Shut up." Short shouts came from the mouths of two people at the same time. Shui Lei and Luo Nan spoke in unison, shouting to stop Chen Xiaolin's irrational actions of not understanding the situation at all. After shouting, Shui Lei locked onto the enemy in front of him with full concentration. Luo Nan spoke a few more words. "Senior sister, please calm your emotions, okay?" As he spoke, he turned his face to face Chen Xiaolin from all sides. Chen Xiaolin was stupefied for a moment. She was locked in place by Luo Nan's mottled and strange gaze. It was as if all the strength in her body had been sucked out in an instant. She leaned against the corner of the elevator, her mind a field of blankness. Luo Nan used hypnosis to temporarily control Chen Xiaolin. Then he raised his head to look at the upper part of the elevator. Shui Lei's attention was on the formidable enemy before him, but Luo Nan's attention was on an even stranger level. The burning wraith that had struggled within Shui Lei's body in the previous fight had already drilled out from Shui Lei's body. It had seized a considerable amount of blood and energy. And at the same time, the burning wraith also leaped out from within the body of the fierce black-suited male. The two intertwined and fused together before Luo Nan could react, growing stronger in an instant. This sort of change really exceeded the scope of Luo Nan's reaction. Luo Nan also wanted to resolve this problem. The heavily chained crow had already been released and the wraith sign was glowing. But it didn't display the crushing superiority of the previous few times. It even displayed a bit of caution and conservatism. This was because the burning wraith that had just fused together in the elevator was the most powerful one Luo Nan had ever seen. Even the one Luo Nan had once controlled to turn the military transport ship upside down seemed to be somewhat inferior. The appearance of the burning wraith's body was even more similar to the appearance of the human-faced arachnid from the R&D district. Luo Nan saw the information from Quantum Corporation and confirmed a step further. The burning wraith's body was indeed like a hybrid between a human and a spider. To be more precise, it was a giant spider that was clinging onto the back of a human. Half of its body was fused into the human's body. The two shared the same head. It was ugly and demonic. The wraith floated in midair. Actually, it was still using a strange method to endlessly absorb the energy from Shui Lei and the black-suited male. Shui Lei's symptoms of being easily fatigued actually came from this. His opponent was actually more or less the same. Through the senses of the wraith sign, Luo Nan was able to estimate a few things on a deeper level. The current burning wraith had already devoured at least 10 or more of its own kind to display this sort of form. In other words, purely in terms of quantity, it was several times stronger than the wraith sign on Luo Nan's side. Luo Nan couldn't help but sigh at his own naivety as he thought about the hunting thoughts that had just existed. This was the rhythm of being devoured by the enemy. They lost their previously all-conquering strength and stopped outside the burning wraith, trembling. At that moment, the effect of fear roar was far from over. In the elevator, the black-suited male, who was obviously under the control of the burning wraith, let out a short roar and once again pounced towards Shuelei. Shuelei was obviously affected by Chen Xiaolan's scream. His body trembled, causing him to lose the initiative. However, he did not show any signs of weakness. He mustered all his remaining strength, and with a low roar, he pushed forward. Both sides once again clashed head-on, and this time, Shuelei only took half a step back. He took a punch, and at the same time, he returned an elbow. For the time being, he did not seem to be at a disadvantage. But Luo Nan wasn't happy. This was because he could already see that the intense combat and the surging emotions were the best catalysts. It caused the blood and energy of the two to transform into a long line of bloody light, endlessly pouring into the burning wraith in the air. Such a method of drawing blood and sucking marrow was more than 10 times more tyrannical than the spore environment of the simmering over a small fire from before. The burning wraith's ability to interfere with reality had already exceeded his imagination. Luo Nan suspected that if he continued to suck like this incorporeal wraith, which only existed on the mental plane, would be able to completely materialize from incorporeal and appear on the material plane. And what made him most vigilant was the opponent's calm attitude. The burning wraith had actually controlled its devouring instincts. It did not directly pounce forward, but instead increased its own strength to the greatest limit to increase its chances of victory. This could already be called an intelligent judgment. Sure enough, the name given by Quantum Corporation, human-faced arachnid, was the most appropriate name for this monster that was endlessly approaching a complete body. This was a savage and cunning hunter. It used every method to weaken its prey and strengthen itself. It was really hard to imagine just what kind of power its complete body would have. Luo Nan knew that the situation was becoming more and more unfavorable. With the support of Shuelei and the black-suited male, the power that the human-faced arachnid was able to grasp was rising with the tide. Luo Nan's heavily chained crow continued to attempt to penetrate through the incorporeal body of the arachnid. The wraith sign at the front was also doing its utmost to devour all the energy it could reach. But there was always a faint layer between them. After a few penetrations and disturbances, the core of the human-faced arachnid remained majestically motionless. Moreover, it continued to strengthen endlessly. Right now, the human-faced arachnid's main focus was still on strengthening its body. Once this strengthening came to an end, Luo Nan really didn't know what kind of terrifying attack would come next. As for Luo Nan himself, it seemed that he had reached his limit. These sorts of chaotic thoughts merely flashed before they were completely dispelled. Actually, there was still one more move. Luo Nan no longer looked at the human-faced arachnid. Instead, he closed his eyes and forced himself to enter the fixed space. Thanks to these past 2 days of difficult tempering, Luo Nan's mental state had made considerable progress. The visualization diagram of the tetrahedron, the inscribed sphere, and the outer scribed sphere appeared in the void in the blink of an eye. The heavily chained crow pulled out from the central region of the human-faced arachnid. It extended outward segment by segment in an attempt to penetrate deeper into the human-faced arachnid. But no matter what, it was separated by a layer. It was far from reaching the destructive might it had when it first subdued the burning wraith. Before, Luo Nan believed that it was because the human-faced arachnid was excessively powerful. But now he had other thoughts. Perhaps, the problem lay with him. What state was he in when the heavily chained crow displayed its greatest power? There was only one answer, the out-of-body state. The feeling of being transparent and clear, which disregarded all material objects, had disappeared ever since he returned to the out-of-body state. Luo Nan didn't understand the reasoning behind it, but the threat was right in front of him. He didn't have the time to ponder over it. Even if he treated a dead horse as a living one, he still had to go. The out-of-body state was an unfamiliar experience for Luo Nan. At first, he was struck by the siege hammer of the burning wraith. Then he was pulled by the heavily chained crow, forcing him into an out-of-body state. Now he had to take the initiative and continue his train of thought from back then. He transmitted the relevant thoughts through the heavily chained crow to the wraith sign. A marvelous vibration was transmitted back, instantly washing over his entire body. This time, Luo Nan's senses were even clearer. He clearly touched upon an incorporeal membrane. Originally, he didn't have the strength to break it, but under the pull of an external force, the internal and external attacks intersected. A hole instantly split open in this membrane. He immediately lost his bindings and floated up. Luo Nan's eyes were still closed, but his senses on the mental plane were completely opened. And at this moment, he met the peerlessly bizarre gaze of the human-faced arachnid. In the state of a soul body. The rattling sound of the heavily chained crow's trembling seemed to be even more fine and clear. It was precisely this subtle change that made Luo Nan instantly understand that his judgment was correct. The previous barrier wasn't because of any other reason. The most important reason just happened to come from his fleshly body. He definitely had to carefully study this problem later. In front of him, the human-faced arachnid's 6 eyes flickered. It was a bit eager to make a move. Perhaps it felt that it had accumulated enough superiority. Or perhaps Luo Nan in the out-of-body state looked more delicious and easier to bully. Luo Nan abandoned his final stray thoughts and looked straight at the human-faced arachnid without fear. Let's try again. The battle was on the verge of breaking out, but in this instant, the elevator's safety skylight collapsed with a rumble. A human figure flew down and smashed right into the head of the black-suited male, who had just crossed the middle of the elevator. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.